Chapter 1851 9 Tribulation's Devil Seed. Zhou could ignore the rules of Destiny platform. He originally imagined that it wouldn't be a problem to give laughingly a nudge. However, that nudge immediately made him feel an extremely terrifying force repel his body into the void. What is this place? When Zhou stopped, he realized that he was no longer in the dimensional space. The dimensional space was empty, but there were huge glaciers everywhere here. Pieces of what looked like ice floated in the air. Some were like mountains, while others extended for more than 10,000 kilometers, like a glacier continent. There were things that looked like icebergs everywhere in the void, but Zhou knew that they weren't ice because he didn't feel any coldness. Just as Zhou was sizing up the crystals, his eyes suddenly focused. He saw that in a nearby mountain-like crystal, there was a fellow wearing a grayish-black cloak. Apart from not having a scythe, he looked like death. Isn't this the dimensional creature that attempted the trip up the staircase? Zhou's heart palpitated. This place was clearly the final destination for those who failed to ascend the Destiny platform. He didn't know the consequences of being thrown into such a place. Light flashed from his body as prisoner, and the child of the land of depravity's Holy Spirit attached themselves to him, protecting his body with Mystic the Arch. Mystic the Arch as sovereign of the universe could allow Zhou to go anywhere in the universe, but he couldn't teleport here. The other teleportation abilities of Sky Stealing Sun Swapping and God Fiend Era also lost their effects. This place seemed to be an independent space outside the universe without any connection to the original universe. The wings on Zhou's back flapped as he traversed the huge crystals. He saw many creatures sealed in crystals. All of them were lifelike as though they were just sleeping. These creatures weren't limited to those who had failed to ascend the stairs. There were also some dimensional creatures that Zhou had never seen before. What creature is that? Zhou saw an extremely huge crystal that was probably many times bigger than Earth. And in the crystal was a strange creature. Its black metal body was winding like a dragon, and its whiskers were as huge as a mountain range. Could this be an apocalypse-grade creature? Zhou's heart stirred. If this was really an apocalypse-grade creature, wouldn't it be like meat on a chopping board to him? He could chop it up however he wanted. The opportunity to advance to the apocalypse grade was right in front of him. Suddenly, he heard a terrifying explosion from afar. He scanned it, and immediately discovered an old acquaintance. In the distant void, the rules of the new world erupted from Karaman's body, but it was no match for its adversary. On its body, ice crystals were spreading as though they had grown out of its body. The new world rules on Karaman's body erupted as it pulled out the crystals that grew out of its body. Its fur and flesh were torn apart. However, the speed at which it pulled out the crystals couldn't keep up with the speed at which the crystals grew. More and more crystals appeared on its body. "Karaman, why are you here?" Zhou blinked to him and asked. Zhou didn't remember when Karaman had entered the Destiny platform. How did this fellow end up in this strange place? When Karaman saw Zhou, it could be said that its eyes were especially red, as though it had met an enemy. It directly conjured New World rules that enveloped Zhou. Zhou used the New World's rules to resolve Karaman's attack, and said with a smile, "You can't even protect yourself, yet you still want to kill me. Do we have such a huge grudge? If it weren't for you, would I be trapped in such a godforsaken place? Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. Why don't you tell me what difficulties you have? Perhaps I can help you. There's no need to fight to the death," Zhou said. "Help me. Why didn't you?" Just as Karaman was about to curse Zhou, it suddenly realized that something was amiss. Those strange crystals weren't growing on Zhou's body. "Ahem. You're right. There's no need to fight to the death. We are all people of status. We should talk nicely." Karaman's change in expression was unimaginable. Human sovereign. Look at what's on me. Can you help me get rid of them first?" Karaman licked its lips and said to Zhou, "I have to take a closer look at this. Tell me first how you grew these things. Perhaps I have a way," Zhou said with a smile. "I don't King know how this thing grew. Previously, after you had a friendly exchange with me, I found a way out in the dimensional space. Who knew that I would accidentally enter this godforsaken place? Then, these damn things began to grow on my body. Furthermore, they grew longer and longer. They continued growing after I plucked them out. How can you not have this on you?" As Karaman spoke, it suppressed its desire to express its true thoughts while speaking nicely. "Perhaps humans are born immune," Zhou said. "Immune my ass. I saw many humans wrapped in crystals over there." Karaman shouted loudly in the beginning, but when it realized that it still needed Zhou's help, its voice slowly turned gentle. "In that case, my strength might be able to restrain these crystals. Do you want me to help you pull it out?" Zhou stared at it and said with a smile, "Bro, thank you so much. From now on, you are my brother. If there's anything, just say my name. I guarantee that no one in the dimension will dare touch you. Karaman was overjoyed as it hurriedly said. Bro, quickly do something. The crystals on my body are growing. Alright. Joen waved his hand and slashed at the crystal on Karaman's body. He didn't really want to help Karaman. He just wanted to see if his strength could really restrain the crystals. Crack! The crystal shattered when the power of in the human world slashed at them. The shards fell, disappearing in the air. When Karaman saw that the crystals that Joen had shattered didn't grow back, it shouted excitedly. Bro, you're really something. This move is really useful. Quickly remove the crystals from my body. I don't know how to leave this place alone. It's good to have this fellow to scout the way. With a thought, Joen slashed out again, using in the human world, shattering the crystals on Karaman's body. Soon, the crystals on Karaman were all shattered, and they didn't grow back. Without the crystals, Karaman felt extremely relieved. It shook its body, and the bloody wounds immediately healed at a speed invisible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, it was back to normal. Bro, not bad. You're different from those treacherous humans. If there's anything in the future, just give my name. I guarantee that no one will dare provoke you in the dimension, said Karaman. Karaman, do you know how to leave this place? Joen naturally didn't take its words to heart. Who the hell knows how to get out? I don't even know how I got in, Karaman said gloomily. Then let's find a way out together. As Joen spoke, he flew in a direction. Wait for me. I'll go with you. Karaman was afraid that the crystals on its body would grow out again, so it hurriedly followed Joen. The two of them hadn't walked far when they saw a huge metal creature sealed in the crystal. Karaman immediately said in horror, This is a 9 Tribulations Devil's Seed. Why is it here? Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1852 Astonishing Discovery. Do you know this thing? Is it an apocalypse-grade creature? Joen asked Karaman. You don't even know about the 9 Tribulations Devil's Seed? Oh right. You are a human from Earth. What could you know about the dimension? Before the Immortal Arch unified the dimension, there was actually another race that could fight the Immortals, the Devils. However, the Devils were later destroyed by the joint forces of many races in the dimension. Unlike the Immortals, the Devils are the public enemy of the dimension. This 9 Tribulations Devil Seed is one of the Devil King's apocalypse-grade pets, said Karaman. Pet? Did you say pet? An apocalypse-grade creature is just a pet? Isn't it a devil? Joen was alarmed. To be able to treat an apocalypse-grade creature as a pet, how powerful were the devils back then? Yes, a pet. The devils back then. TSK. Speaking of which, if the Immortal Arch hadn't appeared, the various races of the dimension would be nothing but toys. If that Immortal Arch hadn't suddenly vanished, there would be nothing for the races of the dimension. The Immortal Arch that Karaman mentioned was naturally the Arch. Joen thought to himself, it's no wonder Grim Demon is so afraid of demonic Neonate's identity being exposed. The devils were wiped out by the combined forces of all the races in the dimension. They are public enemies of the dimension. Even if it's to eliminate them completely, it's impossible for them to let any of the devils off. I originally thought that all the pets under the Devil King had died in that battle. I never expected the 9 Tribulations Devil Seed to be here, said Karaman. Joen hadn't figured out if he was touching the creatures in the crystals. It wouldn't be good if the things inside came to life after the crystals were destroyed. Furthermore, the 9 Tribulations Devil Seed was the Devil King's pet. The Devil King might be demonic Neonate's elder. This thing was also related to demonic Neonate. It was considered demonic Neonate's pet. The two of them continued walking forward. After a while, Karaman suddenly pointed at a mountain like crystal and said, Skyfiend Consort, why is she here? Joen looked at the crystal and saw an enchanting demoness with a black veil covering her face. She looked seductive and beautiful, but her body was several times bigger than a human's. She was more than 10 meters tall. Is this a devil? Joen asked. Not really. She's similar to the 9 Tribulation Devil Seed, Karaman said with an odd expression. This is also a pet. Joen looked at Skyfiend Consort with a complicated expression. He found the Devil King quite kinky to have this as a pet. Karaman suddenly sped up and flew forward. The horror on its face intensified as it exclaimed from time to time. Hell's Gatekeeper Dog. 6-Path Devil Heart. 7 Sins Phoenix. Star Devourer. What the hell is going on? Why are the Devil King's pets here? Weren't they by the Devil King's side during the battle back then? Karaman cried out. The Devil King should be a collector. He amassed so many strange pets. Joen was nonchalant as he admired the various strange creatures in the crystal. What happened in that battle back then? Why are these fellows trapped here? Did they not participate in that battle, or did they escape after that battle? Karaman muttered to itself. Let's not worry about why they're here. Let's find a way out. Joen wasn't interested in knowing why they were here. Karaman nodded and continued flying forward. Thankfully, there were no more creatures that left him alarmed. Occasionally, he would see creatures sealed in crystals, but they weren't famous. This is... Karaman stopped shouting. It was Zhou Wen's turn to cry out in surprise. In an island like Crystal not far ahead, there was a dilapidated ship frozen. The ship looked identical to the one Zhou Wen had seen in Ah Yong's photo. At the very least, the bow was the same. Heavens, could this be that huge ship? Why is it here? Zhou Wen was puzzled. This was because he had always believed that the ship was somewhere in Chess Mountain. Otherwise, how did Wang Mingyuan and the former principal board the ship? Could it be that they didn't board it at Chess Mountain? Instantly, Zhou Wen was somewhat confused. This made his gradually clearer thoughts turn blurry. According to Zhou Wen's previous speculation, the ship had been damaged during the battle between the Arch and Jing's mother. It had automatically sailed between Earth and the dimensional zone for a period of time. It was during that period of time that the man resembling Sheng and Ah Lai boarded the ship. The ship came out of the source of life and wandered the dimension for a period of time. Later, the Arch was defeated. Due to the oath, she was trapped in Chess Mountain by Jing's mother. Back then, Jing's mother should have already found the damaged ship and placed it in Chess Mountain. The reason for this inference was that after Zhou Lingfeng and company went to Chess Mountain, Wang Mingyuan and the former principal should have seen the huge ship there. However, if the previous speculation was true, why would the ship be here? Zhou Wen was momentarily unable to figure out what was going on. It's a crappy ship. What are you looking at? Seeing that Zhou Wen wasn't following, Karaman flew back and asked. Leave first. I want to take this ship out to take a look. As Zhou Wen spoke, he condensed in the human world and slashed at the crystal that enveloped the ship. A crack appeared in the crystal, but it was nothing compared to the massive crystal. Zhou Wen ignored Karaman and focused on slashing at the crystals. Soon, the crystals were sliced off by Zhou Wen. Is there anything special about this crappy ship? Karaman looked around but couldn't see anything special about it. Karaman didn't dare proceed without Zhou Wen. It was afraid that the crystals would grow on it again, so it could only wait for Zhou Wen. It was unknown how many in the human world strikes he had delivered. The crystals outside the ship constantly shattered and fell. When the crystal outside the ship finally shattered and revealed the hull, Zhou Wen realized that the crystal was only wrapped around the ship like an eggshell. There was no crystal inside. It was unlike the other creatures where crystals grew out of their bodies. Although he could already board the ship, he still cleaned up the crystals wrapped around the ship for safety. The ship finally completely escaped from the crystal. It slowly floated forward and actually moved by itself. Zhou Wen flew towards the deck of the ship and landed where Ah Yong's mother had taken the photo. Since a human had boarded the ship, it meant that there wasn't much danger on the ship. Zhou Wen wanted to know whether it was that huge ship. If it was, what else was on it? Looking at the shattered door, Zhou Wen secretly gathered his strength and walked into the cabin. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1853 Cabin. The wooden hull was damaged in many places, leaving only a few wooden planks strewn or hanging around. Zhou Wen pushed open the wooden door and walked in. He followed the wooden stairs down the narrow passageway to the cabin. There was a corridor below. On both sides of the corridor were rooms. Many of the wooden doors were open. Zhou Wen looked at the length of the corridor and couldn't help but frown slightly. It was probably longer than the entire ship's hull. Clearly, there was a special space in the cabin. Why did you enter this crappy ship? Karaman followed him in. After all, it planned on following Zhou Wen wherever he went. It didn't plan on separating from Zhou Wen before leaving this godforsaken place. Just taking a look. Zhou Wen walked forward. The first room on the left of the corridor was 001, and the first room on the right was 002. The doors to both rooms were open. Zhou Wen looked inside and realized that although the room wasn't big, it was well equipped. There was even a standalone bathroom. It was just a little small, allowing a person to stand inside to take a shower. Although it was small, it was better than nothing. There were also tables, beds, and other things in the room which were fixed to the ground. Although they were simple, they were very useful. There were no living creatures in the two rooms, so Zhou Wen didn't enter and continued walking forward. On the left were odd-numbered rooms, 001, 003, and 005, etc. On the right were even-numbered rooms. Zhou Wen checked the first few rooms and found them open. The things inside were similar, but he didn't find anything special, much less any creatures. The door to 007 was closed. Zhou Wen walked to 007's door and took a deep breath, preparing himself for battle. Then, he reached out to grab the door handle and tried opening it. The door opened. There were still the same things behind the door. There were no living or dead creatures. From the looks of it, all the creatures on this ship had probably escaped. Zhou Wen was somewhat disappointed as he continued walking forward, hoping to find the captain's room. Perhaps he would gain something. Although he felt that there might not be any creatures in the cabins, he still checked them one by one without missing a single room. He scanned every room with his domain, afraid that he would miss something.
That thing looks familiar,
Karaman suddenly said as it looked at a room.
What looks familiar?
Zhou turned his head and looked at the room. He had already seen the room, but there was nothing inside.
Do you see the symbol engraved on that table? It looks a little familiar,
said Karaman as it walked in and came to the wooden table. It stared at a symbol that looked like a text.
You recognize this symbol?
Zhou had seen the symbol, but he didn't know what it meant.
I think I've seen it somewhere before. Let me think.
Karaman thought for a moment and suddenly shouted.
I remember now. This is the mark of the Three-Eyed King. Three-Eyed King? You mean the golden three-eyed god?
Zhou said in surprise.
Yes, I remember now. You went to the Three-Eyed God's Divine Mountain in the Cube's battle. That's right. It's those Three-Eyed Gods. At their respective peaks, the golden Three-Eyed Gods were almost on par with the Immortals. That means the Immortals still had their Immortal Arch. The Three-Eyed God King I'm talking about was the king of the golden Three-Eyed Gods back then. Legend has it that he already had strength that wasn't inferior to the Immortal Arch. Later on, for some reason, the Three-Eyed God King vanished. All the Three-Eyed Gods also vanished strangely. Even the Divine Mountain vanished.
Zhou suddenly recalled the story Grim Demon had told him about rabbits, wolves, and hunters. If the hunter back then was the devils, and the rabbit was the immortals, then the wolf should be the gods. Zhou remembered that Grim Demon had mentioned saving the rabbits and raising the wolves. Did that mean that the immortals were saved and the gods tamed? When Grim Demon recounted this outcome, his tone was filled with mockery. In fact, the immortals had joined forces with the various dimensional races to completely eliminate the devils. As for what role the gods had played back then, it was still unknown. However, from the fact that the golden three-eyed god had transformed into a golden trident for Zhou Wen's use because of demonic neonate, the gods might have stood on the side of the devils back then, resulting in their present outcome. However, based on the timeline, something didn't seem right. The gods were still able to fight the immortals at their peak. This meant that they had prospered for a period of time after the destruction of the devils. In that case, the gods might be on the immortal side and had joined forces with them to destroy the devils.
Are you sure this is the mark of the Three-Eyed King?
Zhou asked Karaman.
There's no mistake. I've seen this symbol before. It's the Three-Eyed King's personal mark,
said Karaman with certainty.
Why is the mark of the Three-Eyed King here? What is the ship?
Karaman asked Zhou.
I also want to know what this ship is.
Zhou really couldn't answer Karaman. Up to now, he didn't know where Jing's mother and this ship came from. He could now guess that the Three-Eyed God King had once been imprisoned on the ship. Zhou carefully scanned the room again. Apart from this mark, there were no other symbols or text. After leaving the room, the two of them continued walking forward. This time, Zhou didn't let go of any symbol or text. Unfortunately, the information he obtained was still 0.
Is this room locked?
When he arrived at room 014, Zhou grasped the door handle but couldn't open it.
Let me do it!
Karaman's eyes emitted a divine light as 2 laser-like beams shot at the door lock. However, the door lock remained intact. It wasn't even scuffed.
What? What is this?
Karaman was given a fright. Although it hadn't used its full strength, its apocalypse-grade strength couldn't even damage a lock. This was too shocking. Karaman once again gathered the power of the apocalypse, hoping to blast open the entire door. However, when the power of the apocalypse struck the door, the wooden plank that looked like it couldn't withstand a single strike acted like a sponge. It sucked up the apocalypse power that Karaman shot out without budging.
What the hell is this ship?
Karaman looked at the door in horror.
I also want to know what this is.
Zhou stared at the door lock for a while before condensing the inhuman world power and slashing at it with one hand. Crack! Zhou smashed through the door lock with one hand as the door creaked open. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1854 A Human. Zhou and Karaman looked into the room and immediately perked up. There was a creature sitting in there. He sat with his back facing the door. In front of him was a table. From the back, he resembled a human. He was wearing denim clothes and a headset. No matter how they looked at his attire, he looked like a youth who had yet to step into society, or a technical expert who was good at computers. But how could there be such a young man on this ship? Zhou found it unbelievable. Who could board the ship? They were all mythical figures like God Shiva and Gaia. Is a skilled expert comparable to those mighty figures? Zhou found it ridiculous. Perhaps he was the same as Alai, a passerby who had accidentally boarded the ship. He wasn't one of those existences. He subconsciously used the human realm domain to scan the person and immediately realized that it was only a corpse. Although it remained sitting and its clothes were still intact, its flesh had long withered, leaving only bones. On the table in front of the youth was a laptop. He held the mouse in one hand and had his other hand resting on the keyboard. It was unknown how many years had passed since he had died, but the youth continued maintaining this posture. Is this really a human gamer? Zhou sized up the corpse in surprise. Zhou had originally imagined that this was another person like Alai, but on second thought, he felt that something was amiss. When did the Great Flood miss happen? When did the huge ship descend? Were there computers back then? Ignoring the laptop, even the denim clothes on the corpse were impossible back then. Could it be that this person only boarded the ship in the past few centuries? That's not right. The ship had long vanished. When did he board? Zhou was puzzled as he looked at the laptop. He carefully moved the laptop from under the corpse's hand and tried to switch it on, but there was no reaction. It was unknown if it was broken or out of battery. Zhou guessed that it was definitely out of power. Whether it was damaged or not was unknown. Thankfully, he had many daily necessities with him. He found a set of high-capacity batteries used for traveling. Thankfully, the laptop's plug was compatible. He plugged it in to see if it could be charged. While charging, he sized up the other things in the room. The room gave a vibrant feeling. There was a blanket on the bed, a down pillow, and even a poster of a beauty by the bed. Zhou carefully looked at the beauty on the poster. She had a round face, and she wore a white miniskirt and boots. Her long legs were fair and slender. She looked very eye-catching. He didn't know her. Zhou had never seen this female celebrity before, nor did he know what era she was from. In fact, Zhou might not even know a female celebrity of his era. Unfortunately, there was no internet in such a godforsaken place. Otherwise, he could search online to see what era the female celebrity on the poster was from. This way, he could know what era this corpse was from. He took out his phone and took a few photos of the poster. He planned on investigating after he left. Perhaps he could find some clues. Apart from the things on the bed and some daily necessities, Zhou also discovered a suitcase. When he opened it, other than some clothes, there were also some magazines of girls dressed in revealing clothes. Zhou hurriedly picked up the magazine. It wasn't that he wanted to look at the beauties. If there was a date on the magazine, he should be able to tell the time from it. However, he soon realized that the magazine was weird. He could understand the pictures. They were all sexy beauties that were a feast for the eyes, but he didn't recognize any of the words on it. Even the numbers and symbols were completely different from what he knew. What language is this? Why are the numbers and symbols different from those used by the world? Zhou found it increasingly odd. Zhou had no choice but to put away the magazines before flipping through the suitcase. There was nothing worth noticing inside. Zhou looked at the corpse again and said to it, "Bro, I don't mean to be disrespectful to you, nor do I covet your wealth. I just want to find something that can determine your identity. If possible, I can take you home." With that said, Zhou rummaged through the pockets on his clothes. In the shirt pocket, Zhou found a wallet. Apart from that, he didn't find anything else. When he opened the wallet, there was no money inside. There wasn't even a coin, nor was there a bank card or identification card. There was only a photo of the beauty on the poster. From the looks of it, this brother is obsessed with that female celebrity. He didn't put anything in his wallet, but a photo of that female celebrity. Zhou took out the photo and looked at it before casually flipping it over to look at the back. Then, he saw a strange symbol written on the back of the photo. He didn't know what it meant. Zhou suddenly thought of something and looked at the laptop. Indeed, he saw similar symbols on the keyboard. Don't tell me this is a passcode? Zhou searched the notebook for a while and found the suspected switch. I hope it can be turned on. After pressing the switch, Zhou chanted inwardly. Soon, the computer screen lit up and he was immediately overjoyed. What's this? Beside him, Karaman sized up the laptop curiously. Laptop. When Zhou answered, a horizontal bar appeared on the computer screen with an unknown symbol behind it. Although he couldn't read, he could guess that a passcode was needed. Zhou flipped the photo over and matched the symbols on the photo, searching for the corresponding symbol on the keyboard. This keyboard was somewhat different from the keyboard layout Zhou was familiar with, but it was similar enough. After typing the characters, Zhou didn't know if the button in the usual spot was the enter key, nor did he dare press it. He used the mouse to click on the arrow after the text box. After hearing some beautiful chime, there was finally an image on the computer. It was a picture of the female celebrity. There were many icons on the desktop that were different from the ones Zhou was familiar with. He couldn't understand the words beneath the icons. He could only click on it randomly. Thankfully, the usage was the same. He could open an icon by double-clicking. Many of the functions of the icons were unknown after opening them. Thankfully, after some fumbling, He already knew which icon represented folders, and which icon represented documents or pictures. After a series of clicks, he found many folders containing pictures. After clicking on them, he was dumbfounded before immediately closing them.
You humans look pretty good with your buttocks bare. Why do you guys wear those troublesome clothes?
Karaman also saw the pictures and curled its lips. Joe ignored it, and found the folder where documents were stored. He opened a few and saw that they were all words and symbols that he couldn't understand. Just as he was about to give up, he suddenly saw a document with a few design sketches. The sketch immediately made his pupils contract as he revealed a look of disbelief. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1855 Ant City Blueprint. The sketch was of an ant. From the first few simple strokes to the subsequent details that were gradually filled in, it presented a strange cartoon design of an ant. However, no matter how one looked at it, this ant looked similar to the ants from Ant City. It couldn't be said to be similar. They were identical. Joe hurriedly scrolled down again. There were many more sketches. This time, it was even more obvious. The various ant prototypes from Ant City could be found here. Without a doubt, the sketch here was likely the prototype of the Ant City dungeon. Joe wished he could become a linguist who could immediately understand what the words meant. Unfortunately, he wasn't one. He could only look at the illustrations. This document was filled with original blueprints of various ants, but he didn't see any other pictures. Joe closed the document and clicked on other documents to look for illustrations. In the same folder, Joe found the designed sketch of the ant nest. There were all sorts of scenes inside, and they were basically the same as the ones on the phone. Could it be that this fellow designed ant nest? Joe looked at the corpse with a complicated expression. He flipped through all the documents and carefully looked at all the places where he could see pictures, but he didn't see any pictures related to phones. He didn't see the sketch of Ant City's guardian either. He didn't even see the design of the cocoon. Strange, why aren't they here? Owen was puzzled. Ant Nest's design drafts were all there, but there were no designs of Ant City's guardian. There was no cocoon in the map either. This was somewhat strange. As he couldn't read or find files like videos and pictures, he could only put away the notebook to study when he returned. Joe had originally wanted to take the corpse out for burial, but when he thought about it, where else was more suitable as a grave? It was basically impossible for a living person to come in and disturb him. If he was taken out for burial, someone might dig up his grave hundreds or thousands of years later and use his corpse to witness the existence of history. Joe only took a picture of the celebrity and left her there to accompany him. After leaving the room, he continued exploring the remaining rooms with Karaman. Most of the rooms were empty. There were a few locked rooms. After Joe opened the doors, he realized that they were empty and even cleaner. It was likely that no one had lived there. After passing through the entire corridor, a total of 200 rooms, he didn't see any other creatures. He guessed that when the ship was damaged, all the creatures inside had escaped. At the end of the corridor was a staircase that led downwards. The two of them walked down the stairs and realized that there were all sorts of machinery and equipment below. There was no space for people to live. Joe didn't know much about machinery, but he could tell that the ship's machinery was a little strange. It was different from all the machinery Joe had seen before. The various machinery inside wasn't made of steel, but something that looked like a mix of metal and plastic. He did not know what it was. Many machines and instruments had been destroyed. There were several large holes in the ship's hull. It was likely that it had suffered serious damage during the battle. Among the destroyed equipment, Joe saw that there were no circuit boards or other components inside. They were all made of rows of crystals. Only the outer shell was made of the metal and plastic-like material. Joe picked up some crystal fragments and the material that had fallen to the ground and planned on getting someone to study them. Although the interior was severely damaged, there were still a few instruments and some machinery operating. This was probably the reason why the ship was still moving on its own. After circling the area, they didn't discover anything, nor did they find any other paths. Joe and Karaman returned to the cabin on the upper level. As they walked back, they looked around again. After confirming that there was nothing else, they left the cabin. Joe looked at the second floor on the ship. It was the control room of the ship. It had been severely damaged. Half of the helm had been destroyed, and the remaining half was tattered. It was unknown if there was anything valuable inside.
This ship is really strange,
said Karaman.
How is it strange?
Joe asked casually.
The thing down there should be the energy source of this ship, right? That's right. That was the engine room. What's wrong with that?
Joe didn't understand what Karaman meant.
Since there's an engine room, why does this ship have sails?
Karaman pointed at the tattered sails. Joe was slightly taken aback. He had really never thought of this problem. Previously, he had the impression that this was a ship with many sails, so he didn't sense anything amiss. However, With Karaman raising the issue, Zhou felt that something was amiss. The ship's propelling system was so advanced that even though it was damaged to such an extent, it could still propel the ship forward. With such advanced technology, was there a need to use sails? However, not only did this ship have sails, but it also had multiple sails. It was like a sailboat that could only rely on wind in ancient times.
Are these sails meant to save energy?
Zhou felt that something was amiss. Why would a ship that could sail freely in space need that bit of wind? Furthermore, there wasn't wind everywhere.
Could it be just for decoration?
Zhou said after some thought.
If it's really for decoration, there's no need to get so many sails. 3 sails will be more aesthetically pleasing. Furthermore, I've just seen them. The design of these sails is very reasonable. They should be usable,
said Karaman.
What do you think these sails are for?
Zhou couldn't figure out what they were for, so he asked Karaman.
How would I know? Maybe when they're on break, they will raise the sails and let it float around,
said Karaman casually. Zhou felt that this answer was even more unreliable, but he couldn't think of any other explanation. Therefore, he stopped thinking about it, and went to the helm on the 2nd floor. The helm was filled with rotten wooden planks. Half of the rudder had been destroyed, and only a small portion hung on it. It looked like the drive rod had snapped. Zhou moved the wooden planks away one by one, hoping to find something useful inside. Soon, he discovered a plastic bag with words he didn't recognize printed on it. When he opened it, he saw that it was filled with white things. Zhou took a careful look and his expression turned odd. This was clearly a pack of baby diapers. Zhou immediately thought of Enjing. It was very likely that Enjing's mother had lived in the helm with her, and had even changed her diapers here. Karaman was also rummaging through something on the other side, when it suddenly said in surprise,
"What's this?"
Zhou turned his head, and saw it touching something spherical with its hooves. Chapter 1856 Disordered Images. Zhou carefully looked at the sphere. It was the size of an adult man's fist. Half of it was made of the white metallic plastic, while the other half was black like glass. Zhou picked up the sphere and carefully studied it. He realized that there was a small circle on the upper hemisphere. After touching the small circle, the black half of the sphere suddenly lit up. Zhou hurriedly released his grip and looked at the sphere warily. The sphere automatically floated up. The black glass half shot out a beam that produced a holographic projection in the air. The video was of a woman and a baby. It looked like it was recorded from inside the ship's helm. The woman looked quite beautiful and looked like the mother of the baby. She seemed to be an ordinary human woman. The baby was somewhat strange. She was placed in a sealed transparent box. The woman was only teasing the baby from the outside. It was obvious that the baby was very weak. She reached out her tiny hands in a bid to hug the woman, but all she could do was touch the transparent lid and look helplessly at the woman outside. Could this be Enjing and her mother? Zhou thought with a strange expression. There were many scenes in the video. Some of them were of the woman watching the child, while most of them were of the baby. It was obvious that the woman was recording the baby's growth. It was also obvious that the woman loved the child very much. The woman sometimes spoke, but Zhou couldn't understand a word she said. It wasn't a language he knew, so he naturally didn't understand her. Those were pretty much all the scenes. Zhou found them meaningless, so he decided to let it play by itself while he searched for other useful things in the helm. Under the tattered wooden planks, he found many daily necessities, nothing useful.
July 14th.
Suddenly, Zhou heard a familiar voice. Furthermore, he understood it. Zhou hurriedly turned his head and saw that the holographic projection projected by the sphere was no longer of the woman and child. It was an image of another woman. The moment Zhou saw the woman, his eyes widened. Sigh of the King. Zhou immediately recognized that this woman was definitely the woman in the Sigh of the King. There was no mistake about her figure and temperament. The difference was that this woman was wearing a white uniform and had strange glasses on her face. She sat expressionlessly facing the video and wrote something in a notebook while speaking.
July 14th. Successfully discovered coordinates Z14. Experiment in progress.
The scene changed. It was still of the woman sitting there writing.
July 15th. Spatial positioning activated. Failed for unknown reasons. July 16th. Spatial positioning successful. Phone system connection successful. July 17th. Failure. July 18th. Failure. 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 Failure.
After a few consecutive days of failure, the scene switched to the woman and baby.
Holy sh*T.
Zhou couldn't help but shout gloomily. He knew what was going on. If his guess was right, this sphere was used by the woman in Sigh of the King to record the results of her daily experiments. However, for some reason, it ended up with Enjing's mother. Enjing's mother used it to take videos of her child's daily life. For some reason, it overwrote a portion of the experimental records. After a while, the scene suddenly switched to the laboratory.
September 7th. The experiment is about to end. It seems a little boring. Should I add something interesting?
On the screen, the woman's lips curled up slightly, revealing an evil expression. This was the first time Joe had seen the woman show an expression in front of the camera. It gave him an odd feeling. The scene changed to the woman and a baby again. It gave him a headache. Joe stared intently at the holographic projection, but all that followed were pictures of the woman and baby. After it ended, there was nothing. The sphere automatically shut down and fell to the ground. Joe was momentarily rendered speechless as he picked up the sphere and put it away. Karaman was already impatient as it shouted for Joe to leave quickly and find a way out of this godforsaken place. Seeing that there was nothing useful here, Joe got off the ship with it and watched as the ship continued wandering in this strange space. From the looks of it, Njing and Njing's mother come from another world. I wonder what relationship that world has with this place. Is it like the relationship between Earth and the dimension? Joe felt that something was amiss. The other world didn't seem like the dimension, but like another place where humans lived. From the fragmented experimental records, he could roughly guess that the phone was probably made by the woman inside of the king. However, he didn't know how it ended up in the hands of Njing's mother. The Lost Immortal Sutra definitely belonged to the woman in the Sai of the king. It had nothing to do with Njing's mother. The phone and Lost Immortal Sutra are all hers. Is the interesting thing she mentioned the Lost Immortal Sutra? Or is it something else? Joe thought of the Guardian in Ant City. Unfortunately, the video isn't complete. Otherwise, I would have known what's going on. Joe really wanted to know if the woman inside of the king was still alive. He couldn't understand what Njing's mother was saying, but he could understand what the woman was saying. If the two of them came from the same world, he shouldn't have understood either of them. That was unless Njing's mother had nothing to do with this world, and that woman was the one who was related to this world. She knew the language of this world, so she could use this language to record the results of her experiments. Njing's mother had used some means to obtain the phone, Lost Immortal Sutra, and other things from the woman. It was even possible that this huge ship originally belonged to the woman. Is there really another human world in this world? Joe's curiosity had already reached its peak. If there really was one, he wanted to take a look and see that woman's world. This place seemed to be the same as the dimensional space. It was boundless. No matter how fast Joe and Karaman sped up, they found themselves going in circles. After a while, they realized that they had returned to the vicinity of the Nine Tribulations Devil's Seed.
What the hell is this place? I don't want to be trapped here for the rest of my life. I don't want to be turned into a specimen like these fellows,
Karaman roared gloomily.
Since we can't find a way out, let's give it a shot. If I peel off the crystal, will the creature inside still be alive?
Joe looked around and planned on finding an experimental subject. Chapter 1857 Nine Tribulations Devil's Seed. Karaman said that these creatures were the pets of the Devil King. Apocalypse grade ones were rather dangerous. If these fellows really came to life after shattering the crystal, it was also a question if he could control them. Although they were all pets of the Devil King, and, in theory, they should be considered demonic neonates pets, who knew if they were still loyal to the Devil King. Even if they were loyal to the Devil King, they might not be loyal to demonic neonate. Furthermore, these fellows hadn't died in the battle against the devils. That was problematic in itself.
What's on your mind?
Karaman asked in puzzlement when it saw Joe staring blankly at the Nine Tribulations Devil's Seed.
I'm wondering if the fellows inside are dead. If they are already dead, they are treasures, don't you think?
Joe said with a smile. When Karaman heard that, its eyes lit up.
That's right. If you can break these crystals, let's dig out the New World fragments of these fellows inside. With so many Apocalypse-grade fragments, just the New World fragments dug out can make us invincible. When the time comes, forget Wang Mingyuan. Even if Wang Mingyuan's father comes, we will beat him until he calls me granddaddy.
The dimension had always respected the strong. Karaman didn't find anything wrong with plundering the power of other lives. With Joe planting a thought in it, it immediately had designs on the Devil King pets.
I'm afraid the fellows inside aren't completely dead. After I open the crystal, it will be troublesome if they come back to life,
Joe said with feigned hesitation. When Karaman heard that, it immediately said,
that shouldn't be a problem. Previously, when crystals grew out of my body, I knew how powerful they were. It will be fine revealing these fellows' weak spots as long as you don't shatter the entire crystal, and only shatter a portion. They won't be able to move even if they are still alive. Not a bad idea. Let's give it a try. Do you know what weaknesses the Nine Tribulations Devil's Seed has?
Joe said, as he sized up the Nine Tribulations Devil's Seed. Karaman thought for a moment and said,
the Nine Tribulations Devil's Seed is a very terrifying creature. It was very weak when it was born. It was even weaker than the weakest creature in the dimension. It couldn't even reach the mythical stage. However, its evolution ability was extremely terrifying. As long as there were enough resources, it could constantly evolve without any limitations. It's not like ordinary creatures with limited talent. No matter how hard they work, it's difficult for them to advance to the next level. Legend has it that, after a demon seed advances to the apocalypse grade, its body will stop evolving when it reaches a certain level. Then, it will transcend a tribulation and be reborn. It will once again fall from the top of the pyramid to the bottom and evolve again. This time, after reaching the apocalypse grade, its upper limit will become even higher. It can go further in the apocalypse grade. When it reaches its limit again, it will transcend a tribulation and be reborn. After that, it will become stronger every time it transcends a tribulation and returns to the apocalypse grade. It can be said to be a terrifying existence that grows infinitely. I heard that the Devil Seed by the Devil King's side had undergone 9 tribulations and rebirth. That's why it's called the 9 tribulations Devil Seed. Such a creature's body has almost evolved to a perfect level. It's almost impossible to find flaws in it, said Karaman after some thought. After all that talk, it doesn't have any weaknesses? Zhou Wen was somewhat speechless. Weren't you just spouting nonsense? I'm saying that others can't find the weakness of the 9 tribulations Devil Seed. It doesn't mean that I can't find it. Karaman felt that it was being looked down on and immediately said, according to what I know, the 9 tribulations Devil Seed beside the Devil King didn't evolve perfectly. Although it has undergone 9 tribulations, and should theoretically be perfect, it had secretly eaten another pet raised by the Devil King before it transcended the tribulation. It angered the Devil King, and was slapped in the face by him, causing one of its ears to go deaf. After that, despite transcending the tribulation and being reborn, it couldn't recover the damage to its ear. It left behind a fatal flaw. I see. Which ear do you think its damaged ear is? Zhou Wen sized up the 9 tribulations Devil Seed, and realized that on its huge head, there were 7 ears on each side, making a total of 14 ears. Each ear was bigger than an island. It should be the ear on the left. It's hard to say which one it is, said Karaman. Zhou Wen carefully observed the 7 ears on the left side of the 9 tribulations Devil Seed. From the outside, he didn't discover any damage. However, on second thought, it made sense. The 9 tribulations Devil Seed had experienced 9 tribulations and was reborn. Its external injuries had long healed. It was impossible to tell. It was probably an internal injury. In that case, let's try one by one. Zhou Wen flashed to the 9 tribulations Devil Seed's ear and slashed out with his hand, shattering the crystal outside its left ear. Not long after, a huge ear appeared. Zhou Wen kept observing the 9 tribulations Devil Seed. Seeing that it didn't move, he slashed at the 9 tribulations Devil Seed's ear. With a clang, in the human world's power slashed at the ear, leaving a shallow wound. Although it was a few centimeters deep, this wound was almost negligible to the huge 9 tribulations Devil Seed. Let me do it. The 9 tribulations Devil Seed has undergone 9 tribulations. Its body has already evolved to the extreme. Ordinary apocalypse-grade creatures can't injure its body. You'll have to depend on me, said Karaman as the horn on its head lit up. It lowered its head and transformed into a shocking beam of light that struck the 9 tribulations Devil Seed's ear. Clang! With a shocking bang, Karaman retreated and its body swayed in the air. It almost plummeted as though it was drunk. Is this fellow really one of the strongest apocalypse existences after the Immortal Arch? Zhou Wen looked at the pathetic Karaman with a mixed look. If the apocalypse powerhouses in the dimension ranked after the Immortal Arch were at such a level, it was only right that there was no king. Karaman sobered up a little. Seeing Zhou Wen looking at it made it fly into a rage due to its embarrassment. Without a word, it lowered its head and made another charge. Clang! 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 Karaman slammed into it several times, but it failed to shatter the ear. It had already lost its bearings as he spun in the air. Although Zhou Wen looked down on Karaman, it wasn't weak. It could only be said that the 9 tribulations Devil Seed was just too powerful. If a pet of the Devil King is so terrifying, how strong was the Devil King back then? Zhou Wen pondered for a moment before summoning Demonic Neonate. Do you know it? Zhou Wen pointed at the 9 tribulations Devil Seed and asked Demonic Neonate. Demonic Neonate gazed at it for a while before shaking her head at him. Get Grim Demon out, Zhou Wen said to Demonic Neonate. Demonic Neonate obediently pulled out the demonic sword and released Grim Demon. I almost suffocated to death, Grim Demon shouted the moment he came out, but halfway through, he was shocked when he saw the 9 tribulations Devil Seed. He even swallowed his words. Holy *T, 9 tribulations Devil Seed, why is it here? Grim Demon shouted as he retreated,
as though he was very afraid of the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1858, The Opportunity to Rule the World. Chapter 1858, The Opportunity to Rule the World. Only when he realized that the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed appeared frozen did Grim Demon calm down. He looked around, and was even more alarmed when he saw Skyfiend Consort in the distance.
Nine Tribulations Devil Seed, Skyfiend Consort. Why are they here? What is this place? What happened? Grim Demon, you know these creatures, right?
Jowen said to Grim Demon.
Yes, of course I know them. These are fellows who were favored by the Devil King. In that era, we didn't even need to say the devils, who in the entire dimension didn't know them?
Grim Demon asked in surprise.
Why are the two of them here? It's not just the two of them. Look over there,
Jowen said, as he pointed in a direction. Grim Demon flew over in puzzlement. As he flew, crystals grew out of his body, giving Grim Demon a fright. When directly used in the human world to shatter the crystals on Grim Demon.
What's happening?
Grim Demon checked his body, and didn't find any more growing crystals.
Go take a look first,
Jowen said. Grim Demon flew over suspiciously. Soon, his cry sounded. From the looks of it, Grim Demon knew all of the Devil King's pets.
What's going on? Why are the Devil King's most beloved creatures here? Shouldn't they have died in the battle of the fallen devils?
After Grim Demon returned, his face was filled with perplexity.
That's what I want to ask you. As a devil, you should know better than me,
Jowen said.
I wasn't with the devils during that battle. I didn't see what happened with my own eyes. I thought they had all died in battle. Why are they all in such a place? What kind of place is this?
Grim Demon asked. Jowen explained where they were. After Grim Demon heard that, he seemed to think of something and exclaimed.
In that case, this should be the bottom of the dimensional airspace? Is there a problem?
Jowen asked Grim Demon.
I remember a legend. The dimensional airspace's destiny platform is connected to the upper world. The bottom is connected to the taboo land. It's also the universe where your Earth is. Could it be that these fellows saw that the situation was hopeless in that battle and wanted to escape to Earth to avoid the pursuit of the other races, but they were trapped by that strange crystal after arriving here?
Grim Demon said.
Probably not. Would you take a path you don't even know about? Furthermore, with these fellows' abilities, even if Earth hadn't broken out back then, they would have had the ability to open up a spatial passageway to Earth, right?
Jowen rejected Grim Demon's suggestion. Grim Demon's words made Jowen recall something. Back when Wang Mingyuan tore through the passageway to the dimensional zone, demonic neonate had come to Earth through that passageway. Is it possible that when Wang Mingyuan tore through the tunnel, this place was also connected to Earth? Did demonic neonate leave from here? Jowen thought about it, and felt that it wasn't impossible. Unfortunately, demonic neonate had been transformed by the Dead Man Tree after Jowen killed her. She didn't have any memories of the past, or she would have known something. However, Jowen still hoped that she didn't remember any of that. If she really had her memories, she would definitely remember that Jowen had once killed her.
Now that you mention it, I remember something,
Karaman pondered and said.
I heard that after that battle, no one knew where the Devil King's corpse was. No one saw the corpses of the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed or Skyfiend Consort. Everyone thought that they had been killed by the Immortal Arch, but from the looks of it, that's not the case. However, the Immortal Arch had said that the devils had been destroyed. If she wasn't 100% confident, it would be impossible for her to announce it to the world. From the looks of it, only the Immortal Arch knows what went on.
Karaman looked at Grim Demon and said,
You should be the guardian prototype created by the Devil King, right? I never expected anyone in this world to know me.
Grim Demon couldn't help but reveal a smug expression.
How can I not know? The guardian techniques of the various races were learned from the devils. You can be considered the progenitor of guardians,
said Karaman with a smile.
However, from the looks of it, you don't seem to be doing well. You don't even have a proper contractor, and have fallen to the status of contracting a weapon.
Grim Demon was very smug in the beginning, but the more he listened, the darker his expression became. After a while, he said gloomily,
It's none of your business.
Jowen looked at Grim Demon in surprise. He never expected this fellow to have such a lofty background. Karaman sized up demonic neonate and continued.
Your companion beast is a pure devil. This is very rare. Pure devils were very rare back then, much less now. Thankfully, times are different. If Wang Mingyuan hadn't appeared and the immortals were still in charge, you would probably have been attacked by all the races when you brought such a devil to the dimension. No one would be willing to see the devils rise again. They aren't worthy without Immortal Arch.
Grim Demon snorted coldly.
The Immortal Arch is gone, and the Devil King is gone. What's there to be worthy of? The king is gone? Master.
Grim Demon wanted to say something, but he stopped before he could finish. Zhou was also somewhat curious about demonic neonate's relationship with the Devil King. He guessed that they were related by blood. From Grim Demon's appearance, he probably knew. However, with Karaman beside him, Zhou couldn't ask. He planned on interrogating him when there was no one around.
By the way, if you want to know what happened back then, why don't you get these fellows out and ask them? Are these fellows still alive?
Grim Demon suddenly slapped his thigh and looked at the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed.
We don't know if it's alive. I'm just afraid that if it's alive, it will bring us harm after we get it out,
Zhou said. The Nine Tribulations Devil Seed was so terrifying that his strength couldn't even injure it. If it really wanted to kill someone, it would be troublesome.
Don't worry. There's no way it would dare do so.
As Grim Demon spoke, he subconsciously glanced at Demonic Neonate. Zhou naturally knew what Grim Demon meant, but he found it odd. Even if Demonic Neonate was a descendant of the Devil King, the races in the dimension only respected the strong. They were loyal to the powerful Devil King, but they might not bow down to Demonic Neonate, who hadn't grown to her full potential. This was also one of the reasons Zhou hadn't considered releasing them. However, from Grim Demon's indication, he seemed to be very certain that the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed would bow down to Demonic Neonate.
Are you sure?
Zhou asked Grim Demon.
Of course I'm sure. Don't worry.
With that said, Grim Demon used a special ability to send his thoughts into Zhou's mind.
They will definitely be loyal to Master. If they are still alive, Master can reign supreme over the dimensional zone with their help. The opportunity to rule the world is right in front of her.
Chapter 1859 Breaking the Seal. Chapter 1859 Breaking the Seal. Reign supreme? Zhou glanced at Grim Demon and said nothing. Grim Demon felt a little uncomfortable under Zhou's gaze. He sent another voice transmission.
I swear with my life that those guys definitely won't dare to hurt Master. You have to trust me.
Zhou thought to himself, as if I'll believe you. You're loyal to Demonic Neonate, but not to me. You only said that they won't hurt Demonic Neonate, but you didn't say that they won't hurt me. Zhou ignored Grim Demon and turned to look at the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed. Then, he pulled out the Human Sovereign Stone Saber and used Sin of All Life. Infinite power surged into Zhou's body from all directions, boosting his strength. Energy even seeped out of Karaman and Grim Demon and surged towards Zhou.
What are you trying to do?
Grim Demon shouted in horror. He wanted to stop Zhou, but he didn't dare. Zhou ignored him. When his strength reached a certain level, Human Sovereign Stone Saber slashed at the exposed ear with a terrifying new world nomological power. Crack! The nigh indestructible huge ear was sliced apart by Human Sovereign Stone Saber like an island cleaved off from the mainland. Although the ear was severed, no blood flowed out. There was still indestructible flesh inside.
From the looks of it, it wasn't this ear that was injured,
Karaman said after some thought. Zhou didn't say a word as he shattered the crystal over another ear. He used Sin of All Life again to slice open the ear. However, there were still no signs of him severely injuring the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed. Zhou had no choice but to shatter the crystal that enveloped another ear. One ear after another was split open by Zhou, but he only managed to slice them off. He didn't discover the weakness of the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed. He had sliced off 6 of the 7 ears on the left, leaving only one.
This should be this one,
said Karaman. Zhou once again condensed the Sin of All Life and sliced off the ear, but he still failed to discover the weakness that Karaman had mentioned.
What did you just say?
Zhou wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at Karaman. After using the Sin of All Life 7 times, Zhou's body suffered immense pressure, but he didn't find the weakness that Karaman had mentioned.
Isn't it the left? Then it should be the right,
Karaman said awkwardly.
You said the left,
Zhou said with a frown.
That was what was on my mind. The Devil King isn't left-handed, so when slapping the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed with his right hand, he would definitely hit ear on the left. I never expected the miscalculation. Could it be that the Devil King is left-handed?
Karaman pretended to be in deep thought.
Do you believe that I'll slap you to death with my left hand?
Zhou stared at Karaman angrily. He never expected Karaman to be so unreliable as to use such a method to deduce the location of the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed's injuries. Karaman knew that it was in the wrong and pretended not to hear Zhou. It said awkwardly.
It must be the right. Try again.
Helpless, Zhou rested for a while before preparing to chop off the ears on the right.
Are you crazy? They are all Master's strongest helpers. With them, you can regain control of the dimension and become the Lord of the Dimension. What's the point of killing it?
Grim Demon sent a crazy voice transmission to Zhou. Zhou found him annoying and got Demonic Neonate to unsummon him into the demonic sword. His ears immediately enjoyed silence. Zhou held his saber and walked towards the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed again, despite finding Karaman unreliable. It was very likely that the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed didn't have any so-called weakness. However, there was no other way now, so he decided to give it a try. Zhou didn't discover anything when he sliced off the first right ear. It was the same for the second and third ear. However, when Zhou sliced off the fourth right ear, he realized that there was a hole in it. It was obvious that the hole was formed because of fractured bones. It was different from the normal ear structure of the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed.
So the legend is true. The Nine Tribulations Devil Seed's ear was really injured by the Devil King.
Karaman cried out excitedly. Zhou was somewhat speechless. Karaman was just taking hearsay seriously. It was just lucky to get it right. Karaman didn't care about this. It flew into the ear hole, planning to kill the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed from the inside. Zhou didn't follow. He waited outside with demonic neonate for the outcome. Zhou knew that Karaman was in a rush to enter because it wanted to find the New World fragment of the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed. It was afraid that Zhou would get to it first. Zhou also wanted the New World fragment, but he wasn't sure if the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed was dead or alive, nor was he sure if it still had the ability to fight. Zhou didn't wish to take the risk. If Karaman wanted the New World fragment, he could let it have it. Since it couldn't leave the bottom of the dimensional airspace, it could only rely on Zhou. When the time came, he wasn't afraid that it would not cough it out obediently. Terrifying light flashed from time to time through the ear hole. Karaman was probably wreaking havoc inside. Crack! Crack! Karaman was engaged in wanton destruction inside, but it didn't know that cracks had begun to appear on the crystal over the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed. Zhou watched as cracks spread across the huge crystal. He was somewhat alarmed and puzzled. This fellow is actually still alive. Furthermore, its strength can break through the crystal. This is somewhat strange. Since its strength can break through the crystal, why is it sealed here?
Karaman, come out now. Something isn't right outside.
Zhou shouted into the ear hole.
If there's anything wrong, wait for me to come out.
Karaman's voice came from inside, but it had no intention of coming out.
Cracks are appearing on the crystal. It's best if you come out quickly,
Zhou said again.
Haha, you want to trick me into leaving so that you can come in and snatch the New World fragment, right? I'm not easily fooled. I'm about to break through the doorway to the New World and obtain its New World fragment. Don't even think about snatching the fruits of my labor. After I obtain the New World fragment, I'll naturally leave and see what cracks there are.
Karaman answered smugly. No matter how benevolent I am, I can't redeem a person who has a death wish. Zhou shook his head slightly, and didn't say anything else. All he did was watch the cracks on the crystal constantly expand. Bang! The cracks were as big as a canyon, but it was also like a river that meandered over the crystal. Soon, large chunks of crystal fell from the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed's body. Crystals that were as large as a mountain or even a huge island fell. The scene was unimaginably spectacular. It was as though Earth had cracked open and the continent had collapsed into the sky. Zhou picked up demonic neonate and placed her on his shoulder as he watched this beautiful and magnificent scene. Karaman had no idea what was happening outside and was still dealing damage inside. Most of the crystals that enveloped the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed had already peeled off with nothing but a few crystals remaining. Its huge moon-like eyes suddenly opened. They were like two pitch-black moons, but also like deep black holes. Just a glance was enough to make one feel like they were being sucked in. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1860 Master. Chapter 1860 Master.
Achoo!
The Nine Tribulations Devil Seed sneezed and spat Karaman out of its nostrils. Karaman was wrapped in a bubble. Despite it desperately stabbing at the bubble with its horn, the bubble didn't shatter. It was nothing like ordinary bubbles. No matter what Karaman unleashed, all the bubble did was distort and deform. It couldn't be pierced. Karaman was actually trapped by the bubble. Its sharp horn couldn't even pierce through it. After the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed finished sneezing, it roared at the sky. The wound on its ear quickly healed, and it recovered in the blink of an eye. It looked down at Zhou in company. When its gaze landed on demonic neonate, it suddenly bent down and slowly extended its huge head in front of demonic neonate's feet. A strange voice sounded at the same time.
Master, you've finally woken up.
Karaman originally imagined that a huge battle would ensue, but when it saw this scene, it was dumbfounded.
Master, could it be? That's the Devil King.
Demonic neonate looked at the almost prostrating Nine Tribulations Devil Seed with a puzzled expression. She didn't understand why Food would address her as master. The Nine Tribulations Devil Seed seemed to discover a problem, and immediately flew into a rage. It looked at Zhou with its deep black eyes.
You dare turn master into such a state. You will suffer eternal damnation.
The enraged Nine Tribulations Devil Seed's eyes seemed to turn into a black hole as a terrifying suction force pulled Zhou Wen's body towards its eyes. Suddenly, demonic neonate stood in front of Zhou Wen and threw out the Vajrachakram. When the Vajrachakram struck the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed's head, it immediately let out a tragic cry and tumbled down. The Nine Tribulations Devil Seed had an extremely powerful body. It quickly recovered from the Vajrachakram strike and flew back to demonic neonate.
Master!
The Nine Tribulations Devil Seed remained respectful despite being hit by demonic neonate. It didn't dare show any disrespect. Demonic neonate held the Vajrachakram in one hand and the demonic sword in the other as she glared fiercely at the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed. The Nine Tribulations Devil Seed seemed to understand something. It looked at demonic neonate, who was glaring at it fiercely, and slowly said,
Master, you have indeed come up with a flawless plan. Back then, when you established this body, you once said that we were to wait for your devil soul to be restored if you couldn't recover your true self. From the looks of it, this is the time.
As the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed spoke, a terrifying demonic aura rose from its body. As the demonic aura on its body surged, 8 other terrifying auras also surged into the sky. The crystals around the 8 terrifying creatures, Skyfiend Concubine, Hell's Gatekeeper Dog, Six-Path Devil Heart, Seven Sins Phoenix, Star Devourer, Devilish Trichilio Eater, Defy-Bone Spirit, Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate cracked and peeled off as they shattered. Zhou Wen couldn't help but frown when he saw the terrifying creatures shatter their crystals. These fellows were once extremely terrifying existences of that era. Without the Devil King and Immortal Arch, they were invincible. When the dimension was at its peak, all the races had to join forces to defeat the devils. Yet, these fellows could still carve out a bloody escape route to this place. It was obvious how terrifying they were. In this era where Immortal Arch wasn't around, it was probably difficult to find an existence in a dimension that could fight them.
You're finally back? My dear master.
Skyfiend Consort swung her waist and walked over. Every move she made seemed to emit infinite charm that was irresistible. It made one want to throw themselves into her arms. Woo! The Hell Gatekeeper Dog's mouth that seemed to be able to devour the world opened slightly in the void as it let out a deep roar that signaled extreme danger. Its red eyes stared intently at Zhou Wen as though it wanted to devour him at any moment. A man who looked like a true immortal from heaven had 6 halos behind him like overlapping moonlight. The white robe on his body fluttered as he carefully sized up demonic neonate. He slowly said,
Why has Master become like this? She looks no different from when she was born. What happened?
The Seven Sins Phoenix, who was covered in rainbow light and seemed to be transformed from color glazed, let out a baby-like voice.
It looks like something has indeed happened to Master. She hasn't regained her memories.
At first, it had the innocent voice of a baby girl, but it changed with every word. Sometimes, it sounded like an ancient elder, sometimes like a seductive girl, sometimes seductive to the core, and sometimes ferocious like a ghost. This sentence had countless variations. If one were to carefully distinguish it, they would discover that they were switching between a total of 7 voices.
Master hasn't awakened yet. Why did you wake me up?
The black hole like Star Devourer emitted a strange voice. The voice didn't vibrate in the air, but seemed to ring in one's mind.
That human looks delicious. Why don't you let me eat him first?
The body of the devilish Trichilio Eater looked like a giant, but on careful look, his body was made of countless broken limbs. His chest was formed by heads placed side by side, and there were all sorts of severed limbs on his arms. His entire body was covered in distorted mouths and strange eyes. It was as though there were creatures squirming and twisting in his body.
You eat the body. The soul belongs to me.
The Defy-Bone Spirit stood there, as its body phased in and out of existence, like a demonic spirit in the shadows.
Screw off. I want both the body and soul.
Devilish Trichilio Eater snorted coldly.
Shut up. Let me see what's going on with Master.
The only one who looked more like a normal human, Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate, came in front of demonic neonate and bowed slightly.
Master, do you still remember me? There's no need to ask. I don't know what's wrong. Master's memories haven't awakened at all. It's time to use the devil spirit that Master left with us,
said the Nine Tribulations Devil Seed. Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate stared at demonic neonate for a while, and nodded slightly.
Master, don't be anxious. We will let you recover your true self.
As Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate spoke, he turned to the other terrifying creatures and said,
Stop fooling around. Quickly extract Master's devil spirit and help her recover her true self.
With that said, Immortal Slaughter Ancient Subordinate reached out to grab his head. He pulled out a black spirit flame from between his eyebrows and threw it at demonic neonate's forehead. The black spirit flame floated towards demonic neonate's forehead. Demonic neonate threw out the Vajrachakram and smashed it at the black spirit flame. However, when the Vajrachakram smashed into the black spirit flame, it seemed to hit an illusion. It passed through the black spirit flame without being affected at all. Demonic neonate shook the heaven-shrouding bell next. Spatial ripples distorted space, but the black spirit flame remained unaffected as it floated in front of demonic neonate. Demonic neonate pulled out the demonic sword and quickly slashed at the black spirit flame. However, no matter how many times the demonic sword struck the black spirit flame, it was as though it had slashed at an illusion. Again, the black spirit flame wasn't affected at all. The black spirit flame seemed to lock onto demonic neonate. No matter how demonic neonate retreated and dodged, she couldn't affect its approach. The black spirit flame was close to landing on demonic neonate's forehead. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1861 Damaged Ship. Chapter 1861 Damaged Ship. Demonic neonate's figure suddenly vanished and returned to Zhou Wen. The power in Zhou Wen's hand grabbed the black spirit flame and held it in his palm. He could clearly tell that the black spirit flame was only a spirit body. It likely carried a sliver of the Devil King's spiritual consciousness. Although all sorts of powers couldn't injure it, it likely lacked any lethality. It was only effective against demonic neonate. Zhou Wen grabbed the black spirit flame and quickly flew away. The Devil King's pets were alarmed and furious. Shocking new world rules enveloped the world as they intertwined and bombarded Zhou Wen. Under the interweaving of the terrifying new world rules, everything was wiped out. Even Karaman, who was wrapped in the bubble, was crushed.
I share a life with your master. She won't live if I die,
Zhou Wen shouted coldly. The terrifying laws that were about to land on him immediately came to a halt and didn't touch him. The 6 pairs of wings on Zhou Wen's back flapped crazily as he transformed into a shadow and instantly vanished into the horizon. The 9 Devil King pets were alarmed and furious as they immediately chased after him. The 7 Sin's phoenix flapped its wings and appeared beside Zhou Wen like a ghost. Its wings transformed into rainbow threads that wrapped around Zhou Wen's body. Skyfiend Consort also appeared above Zhou Wen like a fairy in the clouds. She stepped on Zhou Wen's head with her bare feet. The other terrifying existences appeared beside him. Zhou Wen's speed was incapable of shaking them off. Zhou Wen's body vanished into thin air, and he couldn't teleport out of this god-forsaken place. He could only use instant transmission here. When the 9 devil pets caught up to Zhou Wen again, they realized that Zhou Wen had landed on the deck of the damaged ship. He bent down and rushed into the cabin. When they saw the ship, they were taken aback. They didn't rush in to capture him immediately.
This ship looks a little familiar,
the 7 Sins Phoenix said.
That's an understatement. It's that ship,
the Defy Bone Spirit said coldly.
Why is it here? And in such a state?
The 9 Tribulations Devil Seed stared at the ship and frowned.
What's there to be afraid of? We weren't afraid back then. Now that it's in such a state, the people inside are probably long gone. What's there to be afraid of?
As Devilish Trichilio Eater spoke, he slapped the ship. His huge hand was almost half the size of the ship. A strange mouth opened on his hand, revealing a mouthful of fangs that were about to crush the ship. However, when his hand grabbed the hull, the gaping mouth filled with sharp teeth failed to tear apart the seemingly damaged ship. His teeth scraped against the wooden planks, producing creaking sounds. They snapped, leaving only teeth marks on the wooden plank. He failed to tear through it.
Ah!
Devilish Trichilio Eater suddenly cried out in pain and retracted his palm. On the palm, there was an additional wound on the mouth as black blood flowed out. Zhou Wen stood in the cabin with the human sovereign stone saber in hand. The saber was still dripping with black blood. The faces on Devilish Trichilio Eater's hand squirmed, as though they wanted to apply pressure and heal the wound, but they couldn't.
Strange! Why can't this tiny wound heal?
Devilish Trichilio Eater exclaimed in surprise.
I wonder what method this fellow used to control Master's destiny body. He is quite something,
7 Sins Phoenix said.
A mere human. Let me control him, and he'll beg for death.
As the Defy Bone Spirit spoke, its shadow-like body transformed into a terrifying shadow that enveloped the entire space. When the shadow reached the cabin's entrance, Zhou Wen held Human Sovereign's ancient saber with both hands and activated in the human world to slash at the shadow.
Human, your saber can't injure me. Ah!
Just as Defy Bone Spirit was speaking eerily, it suddenly let out a tragic cry. The incorporeal shadow had been cleaved open by the Human Sovereign Stone Saber.
Strange. How strange. It's impossible for a corporeal body to injure my spirit body. How can this be?
Defy Bone Spirit retreated. There was a small wound on its shadow-like body that couldn't heal. Instantly, the few terrifying existences were somewhat surprised. Zhou Wen's strength was nothing in their eyes, and this injury was nothing, but for him to injure them with unhealable wounds was somewhat unbelievable.
You idiots who only know how to kill, let me do it.
Skyfiend Consort smiled sweetly as she walked towards the ship. Although her body was like a giant, her figure was extremely graceful. Every move she made emitted infinite charm, making one's mind involuntarily attracted to her.
Sweetie, come into my arms. I'll let you enjoy the most extreme joy in this world.
Skyfiend Consort landed on the deck and spoke to Zhou Wen with a smile. Looking at her flirty appearance and hearing her soul-stirring voice, Zhou Wen's eyes seemed to blur as he walked out of the cabin.
Come, sweetie. I'll let you die of bliss.
Skyfiend Consort emitted strange rules that distorted the original rules of the world. Zhou Wen walked in front of her when she reached out to grab him. Suddenly, a saber beam flashed. Skyfiend Consort exclaimed as a wand appeared on her palm. Zhou Wen had already returned to the cabin. Skyfiend Consort struck out in exasperation in a bid to shatter the entire ship with her terrifying power, but only a few tiny cracks appeared on the deck when it landed. They were almost unnoticeable. The other terrifying existences were even more surprised. Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate looked at Zhou Wen in the cabin and said,
Human, it's easy for us to kill you. We only didn't kill you because of Master that resides in you. If you are willing to return Master, we can guarantee you live and give you a huge opportunity. You claim that demonic neonate is your master, but she's actually just a tool. If your Devil King wants to snatch her body to be revived, what will happen to her soul?
Zhou Wen said calmly.
From the looks of it, there's been a misunderstanding. She's not the tool you mentioned. She's our master's actual body.
Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate patiently explained.
Back then, our master's body was severely damaged, so she had no choice but to use the rejuvenation technique to allow herself to be reborn. She's the Devil King, so there's no such thing as possession. The Devil Spirit is only her past life's memories. Even if she doesn't accept the Devil Spirit now, she will awaken her past life's memories in the future. Accepting the Devil Spirit is just bringing forward the process. It won't do her any harm.
Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate could tell that Zhou Wen was very protective of demonic neonate and wasn't just trying to stay alive. Therefore, he persuaded,
even if her memories of her previous life are awakened, her present memories won't disappear. She's the Devil King, and the Devil King is her. Why would she erase her memories? You did a good job protecting Master. Even if the Devil King awakens her memories, she will definitely view you in a different light. Why do you have to do something that only brings harm to others without benefiting yourself?
Zhou Wen thought to himself, good job my ass. I killed her and made her my pet. If her memories really awaken, will she still be nice to me?
In that case, hand the Devil Spirit over to me. I'll help her,
Zhou Wen said as he guarded the cabin door.
Bullsh asterisk T. What if you go back on your word after we give you the Devil Spirit?
The Nine Tribulations Devil Seed said angrily.
Then give it a try and see if you can snatch her from me,
Zhou Wen said calmly.
Ancient Subordinate, why waste your breath on him? Leave it to me,
Six-Path Devil Heart said indifferently.
It looks like that's the only way.
Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate nodded slightly. Six-Path Devil Heart landed on the deck gracefully like an immortal. He didn't walk to the cabin and only looked at Zhou Wen. Laws were intangible. Zhou Wen stared warily at the Six-Path Devil Heart, unsure what he was up to. Six-Path Devil Heart looked at Zhou Wen for a while, as his expression turned odd. The two of them stared at each other, as the atmosphere gradually became awkward.
Devil Heart, what are you doing? Quickly fuse your mind with his.
The Nine Tribulations Devil Seed shouted.
This person is really strange. I can't sense his mind.
Six-Path Devil Heart said awkwardly. The Devil Pets were alarmed and puzzled. Even they were somewhat afraid of the fusion of Six-Path Devil Heart's mind. They had to pay a certain price to not be controlled by him. A mere human had actually prevented Six-Path Devil Heart from sensing his mind. This was strange. Could it be that he was a dead person without a mind?
Since this method doesn't work, we can only shatter the ship and leave him with nowhere to hide. Then, we can trap him and forcefully extract Master's body,
said Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate.
That's a good idea.
Six-Path Devil Heart returned and nodded.
Then let's work together to shatter this damned ship. Let's see what else he can rely on.
The Nine Tribulations Devil Seed was already impatient as it came to the side of the ship. 9 extremely terrifying creatures surrounded the ship as all sorts of terrifying laws intertwined. When the 9 terrifying forces landed on the ship, the entire ship trembled. The wooden planks creaked as the nails popped out. Paw! Wooden planks snapped one after another. The strength of the 9 devil pets was just too powerful. The damaged ship ultimately couldn't withstand their strength and was close to disintegration. Zhou Wen looked at the tottering ship and couldn't help but frown. Without the protection of the ship, it would be difficult for him to withstand the 9 devil pets. Now that the laws of the 9 new worlds had locked onto the entire space, He didn't even have the chance to use spatial teleportation to escape. Crack! Crack! More and more wooden planks broke apart as nails flew everywhere. With a boom, the deck and planks on the ship shattered and collapsed. The ship instantly turned into a skeleton, revealing the various instruments inside. Zhou body fell and landed on the ship's keel. He couldn't help but be stunned when he saw the scene inside. In the middle of the keel, the outer shells of many instruments had shattered. Zhou saw a figure sitting cross-legged in the cubic crystal. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1862 A Woman in Uniform. Chapter 1862 A Woman in Uniform. Zhou was alarmed when he saw the figure. The person inside the crystal was a woman. She didn't look young, and she had wrinkled facial skin. Her skin was thickly creased, enough to pinch an ant to death. Looks weren't important. The key was the clothes she was wearing. It was a very special white uniform. Zhou had seen such a uniform not long ago. It was the woman in the spherical holographic projection. The woman was wearing this uniform when she was doing the video logs of her experiments. Could it be that this is the woman in the Sai of the King? Is she already this old? Zhou was somewhat disappointed. He imagined the woman in the Sai of the King as a godlike existence, but it turned out that she would also age and die. On second thought, it made sense. Such a woman had lived for an unknown period of time. Calling her an old demoness was an understatement. The woman sat cross-legged in the crystal. On careful look, one would realize that the crystal she was in was actually hollow and filled with liquid. It looked like she was frozen in the crystal, but she was actually soaking in the liquid. However, for some reason, her body remained in stasis regardless of the tremors to the crystal. The ship was destroyed. The instruments inside were also torn apart by the terrifying New World powers. More and more instruments revealed the crystals inside. Some crystals even shattered. Without the protection of the ship, Zhou felt the infinite rules envelop him, preventing him from moving at all. The 9 devil pets didn't want to kill him. They only wanted to imprison him, so that they could strip demonic neonate from him. 9 Tribulations Devil Seed was immediately overjoyed when it saw that Zhou had been imprisoned. However, its expression changed drastically when it suddenly saw the woman in the crystal. Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate and company also saw the woman in the crystal. Their expressions turned nasty. She's still alive? The 7 voices of the 7 Sins Phoenix were filled with surprise. From the looks of it, even if she's not dead, she's about to die. She's only human. Her lifespan is very limited. The devilish Trachilio Eater snorted coldly. Take her life while she's down. What are we waiting for? The devil's fragmented situation is thanks to her. It's time to settle this score. Defy Bone Spirit said sinisterly. I'm just afraid that we aren't her match, said Six-Path Devilheart. Rubbish. If the 9 of us join forces, who can match us other than the Immortal Arch? She's nothing. The 9 Tribulations Devil Seed said angrily. That's right. Although her origins are a little bizarre, she's ultimately not a true powerhouse. If she hadn't won Master's favor and obtained some benefits, killing her would be like squashing an ant, said the Hell's Gatekeeper dog. Don't forget where she came from. That ship and the things on her are powerful. We have to be wary. Six-Path Devilheart said calmly. If those crappy things hadn't bewitched Master, such a huge problem wouldn't have been planted. The 7 Sins Phoenix said coldly. Regardless of whether she's dead or alive, we can't let her live in this world. That's right. I don't care where she came from. I didn't swallow her in the past on account of Master. I've long wanted to kill her. The faces of the devilish Trachilio Eater twisted as they stuck out their tongues to lick their lips as saliva drooled from them. In that case, let's destroy her. It can be considered as avenging Master and us devils. Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate nodded slightly. That's good. Star Devourer also let out an ethereal voice. Then kill her. Killing intent flashed in Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate's eyes as the laws of the New World descended even more violently, grinding away the ship's keel and crystal. Terrifying existences like the 9 Tribulations Devil Seed also pushed their New World rules to their limits. The 9 terrifying New World rules intertwined and crushed the crystal like millstones. The extremely hard crystal shattered upon contact. After the crystal shattered, the liquid inside didn't spill out. It maintained its cubic shape, looking magical and strange. Under the suppression of the 9 New World rules, the liquid instantly evaporated. The woman's body was about to be crushed. Suddenly, the woman opened her eyes and looked at everything in front of her indifferently. The 9 laws crushed the woman, but they didn't even rip her white uniform. Zhou roughly understood what was going on from their conversation. This woman wasn't the woman who did the experiment log that Zhou had seen previously, but Jing's mother. However, for some reason, she was wearing this white uniform. It was also possible that this white uniform was a uniform unique to an organization. They would have won as long as they were a member of the staff. However, when he watched the video, the woman wasn't wearing this white uniform while taking care of the child. After the woman was attacked by the New World's rules, she finally seemed to wake up. Her gaze turned sharp. Light patterns appeared on the uniform as her body instantly soared into midair.
You guys aren't dead yet?
The woman swept her gaze across the terrifying existences and said in a hoarse voice,
How can we die before you? You ungrateful traitor.
The Nine Tribulations Devil Seed cursed. The woman said coldly,
I'm not a member of the devils to begin with. How am I a traitor? How shameless. Who saved your life when you were heavily injured? How can you say such things? How shameless.
Skyfiend Consort snorted coldly.
We were just extracting benefits from each other. It's not like we owed each other.
The woman sneered and said,
There's no need to waste your breath. If you want to kill me, come at me together. You aren't worthy.
Skyfiend Consort glanced at the woman disdainfully.
If not for the clothes on you, what right do you have to spout nonsense in front of us? You would have died countless times. The difference between humans and beasts is that humans know how to use tools, but beasts don't.
The woman said slowly. Enraged, Skyfiend Consort flew up. With a grab of her fingers, chains appeared out of thin air and crisscrossed in the void. The woman quickly dodged, but she was unable to dodge the omnipresent chains. Soon, she was wrapped by the chains and her limbs were bound in midair. However, no matter how hard Skyfiend Consort tried, she couldn't tear apart the woman's body. In the end, she failed to injure her. A light flashed in the woman's hand as a blade of light shot out from her uniform glove, snapping the chains that bound her. Skyfiend Consort flew higher to continue her fight with the woman. Zhou was trapped in the New World rules and couldn't move, but when he saw the battle between Skyfiend Consort and the woman, he found it odd. He had always believed that Jing's mother was an extremely powerful existence, at least at the level of the Arch. However, he realized today that this woman's realm wasn't as high as he imagined. Ignoring the fact that she was inferior to the Arch, her realm was already much lower than Skyfiend Consort. However, her strength was sufficiently powerful. Furthermore, the white uniform was magical and strange, allowing her to fight Skyfiend Consort without being at a disadvantage. How did this woman defeat the Arch? Just by relying on that uniform. Zhou was puzzled. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1863 Strange Uniform. Chapter 1863 Strange Uniform. The battle between Skyfiend Consort and the woman continued. To everyone's surprise, the woman was completely at a disadvantage at the beginning. She was beaten up by Skyfiend Consort initially, only to slowly become stronger and stronger. She began to gain the upper hand. Skyfiend Consort's combat habits and abilities seemed to be seen through by the woman as she was suppressed more and more. Often, before she could attack, the woman's attacks had already reached a spot that would be strategically most disadvantageous for her. The woman held a blade of light in each hand as she constantly moved swiftly in the air. Although she wasn't using instant transmission, her speed wasn't slower than it. She forced Skyfiend Consort to retreat again and again. A strange glint flashed in Skyfiend Consort's eyes. Her body floated in the air as she pressed her palms together again. She closed her eyes and ignored the woman's attack. When the light blade slashed over, Skyfiend Consort's body split into 2, 2 into 4, and 4 into 8. In the blink of an eye, Skyfiend Consort's figure was everywhere, like countless demonesses descending into the mortal world. Vivi. The Skyfiend Consorts in various poses produced thousands of Skyfiend chains that wrapped around the woman. No matter how fast the woman was, she couldn't dodge the omnipresent Skyfiend chains. Her limbs and body were quickly entangled again. The speed at which the blade beam sliced through the Skyfiend chains wasn't as fast as their incoming speed. Skyfiend chains intertwined like gears, locking into each other seamlessly as they quickly imprisoned the woman layer by layer. The Skyfiend chains formed a huge chain ball. The other end was held in the hands of countless Skyfiend Consorts. The scene was like countless demonesses pulling at a black planet. Perish! With her fierce but coquettish voice, the Skyfiend chain in every Skyfiend Consort's hand lit up. The white light was like burning flames. As they surged through the Skyfiend chains to the chain ball, the entire chain ball ignited with white light. Boom! The chain ball was like a massive hydrogen bomb exploding. The ensuing light blast seemed to illuminate the entire space. The shockwave sent the surrounding huge mountain like crystals tumbling in the air. Those that were closer even exploded. Seeing the terrifying might of this strike, Zhou knew very well that when Skyfiend Consort chased after him, she had scruples about demonic neonate and hadn't attacked him ruthlessly. He wasn't capable of withstanding such terrifying power at present. If Zhou were to take on this strike, he would probably be blasted to pieces. When the blast of light dissipated, Zhou's pupils constricted. In the middle of Ground Zero, the woman was still floating there. Her white uniform wasn't damaged at all. Apart from her hair being a little messy under her hat, there were no other injuries. What the hell is that? Zhou was astounded. He could also tell that the woman had relied on her uniform to survive. But what kind of clothes could withstand such terrifying power without suffering any damage? Even the armor formed by the Apocalypse-grade Mystic Arch couldn't withstand such power without injuries.
A beast is ultimately a beast. It only knows how to use its most primitive claws and teeth,
the woman said disdainfully, as she appeared in front of Skyfiend Consort like a phantom. A light blade suddenly appeared in her hand, as she sliced at Skyfiend Consort's throat. Skyfiend Consort quickly retreated like a ghost. She passed through layers of space, but failed to dodge the light blade in the woman's hand. The light blade was close to hitting her neck. An ancient saber blocked the blade of light and shattered it. The woman's body was lifted, and she was sent flying thousands of meters away before she stabilized herself. Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate stood in front of Skyfiend Consort with a saber in hand. He stared coldly at the woman and said,
"No matter what your origins are, you have to die for betraying Master."
As Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate spoke, he slowly raised his saber. The saber emitted a sanguine glow in the pitch-black darkness, as though it was tainted by the night and blood.
"I've long heard that Immortal Slaughterer Ancient Subordinate is the #1 executioner of the Devil King. He has killed countless alien powerhouses. Today, I want to see if you live up to that name,"
the woman said with a smile as she looked at him, unworried. However, Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate ignored her. He only looked at the saber he held in both hands before raising them, like he was performing a sacrificial ritual.
First life.
With the solemn voice of Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate, he slashed down at the void with both hands. No saber beam appeared in the boundless void, but with a whoosh, the woman's collar split open. A bloody mark appeared on her neck. Thankfully, it wasn't deep, but it made the woman's expression change slightly.
Second soul.
Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate slashed down again with an icy expression. Crack! The hat on the woman's head and uniform split into two as a strand of hair fell.
Third
Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate extended his hand and wiped the blade. A blood sacrifice was made to the blade, making it darker and even more sinister. There was no light reflecting from the blade at all. As this saber slashed down from the void, the woman, who was rapidly darting through the sky, was suddenly thrown up on her back. Her body was constantly distorted and deformed. Tears appeared on her white uniform as blood spewed out from them. It was as though countless invisible blades were dismembering the woman. Blood splattered across the sky. When Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate retracted his saber, the woman's body was already covered in blood. Her white uniform was completely dyed red with blood, no longer showing any white.
As expected of Ancient Subordinate,
9 Tribulations Devil's Seed was overjoyed. To its surprise, just as it finished speaking, it saw the woman suddenly stand up. The blood on the uniform seemed to be sucked into the uniform. Soon, the white uniform restored its original color. Light connected the wounds, and in the blink of an eye, they returned to normal. Not even a speck of dust was left behind, much less a hole.
Immortal Slaughtering lives up to its name. Unfortunately, I'm not an immortal. You can't kill me.
As the woman spoke, she suddenly reached out and grabbed. A blade beam appeared in her glove again. She held the blade with both hands and slashed at the void. She shouted softly,
First life.
Crack! Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate was alarmed as he reached out for the back of his neck. His hand was covered in blood, and a bone-deep gash had appeared on his neck. His bones had nearly been snapped.
Second soul.
The woman slashed again. However, the blade beam failed to land. A figure appeared in a dream-like state as it slammed into her body and instantly vanished. The woman's hands that were holding the blade beam froze there, unable to slash any further.
You are only relying on this strange set of clothes. Now that you are me, how can you resist my strength?
The woman's mouth produced the voice of the six-path devil heart as she reached out to undress, as though she was about to take off the white uniform. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1864 Escape. Chapter 1864 Escape.
Discovered Psyche Invasion. Beginning elimination.
The white uniform suddenly emitted an electronic voice. Then, light threads appeared on the uniform and stabbed into the woman's body. It was impossible to tell if there were any light threads inside the uniform. The woman's exposed face had light threads stabbing into it like extremely thin infusion tubes. Strange light seemed to be injected into her body. Bang! Six-path devil heart bounced out of the woman's body with an ugly expression. Strange threads of light swam through his body. Just as six-path devil heart wanted to remove the threads of light from his body, the woman had already arrived in front of him and slashed at him. Immortal Slaughtering Ancient Subordinate brandished his saber and slashed over, blocking the woman's blade beam and saving Six-Path Devil Heart. Seven Sins Phoenix spewed out rainbow divine light that shone on the woman. Hell's Gatekeeper Dog opened its mouth and was about to swallow the woman when Devilish Trichilio Eater threw a slap. The 9 devil pets joined forces to attack the woman. It was different from when they attacked Zhou. This time, they were serious. The woman dodged Ancient Subordinate's saber and was illuminated by the rainbow divine light. The white uniform transformed into a strange mirror that reflected the rainbow divine light at the Hell Gatekeeper Dog, scaring it into retreating. Devilish Trichilio Eater slapped the woman, and the mouth on its palm swallowed her. Their gear like teeth bit down. Bang! A bloody hole appeared on the back of Devilish Trichilio Eater's hand. The woman tore out, but she was sucked in by the black hole like Star Devourer. After a while, Star Devourer's body suddenly trembled violently. White light surged out from the black hole as the woman broke free again. Zhou was dumbfounded. The strength of the 9 devil pets left a deep impression on him, but the woman's uniform left a deeper impression on him. It wasn't just the uniform. The woman was also very strange. Her body was clearly not something ordinary humans could compare with. She wasn't inferior to even apocalypse-grade creatures, but her consciousness and realm were too low. It was so low that Zhou suspected that she was just an ordinary person who had never cultivated. The reason she could fight the 9 devil pets was because of the white uniform that seemed to have a life and intelligence of its own. But could the body of an ordinary human be comparable to an apocalypse-grade powerhouse? Anyway, it was impossible for humans on Earth to have such a body. And Jing's parents and Sai of the King come from a world with humans. Furthermore, could the humans in that world have bodies that aren't inferior to apocalypse-grade creatures? Then why isn't Jing so weak? Isn't she also a human from that world? The more Zhou thought about it, the more puzzled he became. Zhou had another thought. There's something wrong with Jing's body to begin with. The reason Jing's mother came to this world and did so many things was to make Jing's body recover. What's wrong with Jing's body? Why did she have to come to our world to make her recover? Their world looks much stronger than ours. Be it technology or human physique, they are stronger than ours. Then why did she come here and not treat her there? Zhou felt that there were 2 possibilities. One was that Jing's problem couldn't be resolved in that world. The other possibility was that Jing's mother was only a relatively ordinary person in that world. She didn't have the ability to treat her daughter in that world, and this world happened to have something that could treat Jing. Zhou was more inclined to the latter. He even suspected that the huge ship and the white uniform on Jing's mother were obtained by Jing's mother through some unknown method from the woman who created the Lost Immortal Sutra. It was even possible that it had been stolen. If the 2 of them had a good relationship and the woman lent the ship and uniform to Jing's mother, what about the experiment logs? How could she lend something like that to Jing's mother? If it was really something borrowed, Jing's mother probably wouldn't have overwritten the experiment logs. The more Zhou thought about it, the more he felt that there was something amiss. Now, he was certain that the Lost Immortal Sutra wasn't meant for humans in this world to cultivate. It was no wonder no one had mastered it before. If the humans in that world were born with physiques comparable to the apocalypse grade, the humans here would be courting death if they practiced the cultivation techniques there. The crazy battle continued. The entire space was filled with distorted space and shattered crystals. The world seemed to become abstract. If such a battle happened on Earth, Earth would probably have been blasted apart countless times. I definitely can't let these fellows go to Earth, Zhou thought to himself. The 9 devil pets fought the woman with all their might. They no longer had the strength to care about Zhou. Zhou gathered his strength and tore apart the new world rules that trapped him. He planned on escaping first. Before he could escape, a terrifying force swept over and struck Zhou's body, sending him flying. Zhou's body flew hundreds of kilometers in the air like a pellet as he spat out blood. He was extremely depressed. If I were to be accidentally injured a few more times, I would probably die. More. Bang! Just as he thought about it, his body was struck by another force and sent flying again. Zhou hadn't broken free and couldn't move his body. He was sent flying an unknown distance by the force before he slammed into something and stopped. Zhou calmed the churning blood in him before realizing that he had slammed into the Hell Gatekeeper Dog. Its body was covered in wounds as black blood constantly flowed out. One of its eyes was blind, making it look extremely pathetic. Hell Gatekeeper Dog also discovered Zhou. Just as it extended its claws to grab him, it suddenly saw a blade beam slash at Zhou. Hell Gatekeeper Dog suddenly turned around and brandished its sharp claws at the light blade. Nomological forces transformed into claw beams that collided with the light blade. Hell Gatekeeper Dog let out a tragic cry as its claws were sliced off by the blade beam. Blood spewed out. As Hell Gatekeeper Dog cried out in pain, it swept its tail and sent Zhou flying, allowing him to dodge the blade beam that continued slashing forward. Zhou tumbled as he flew out. After being repeatedly struck, the rules of the new world around him weakened significantly as he finally rushed out. Looking at the battle between the devil pets and Enjing's mother, Zhou was momentarily at a loss as to which side to help. The devil pets weren't anything good, but Enjing's mother was also an extremely dangerous person. For Enjing, she almost wanted to destroy Earth. Who knew what crazy things she would do in the future? If she knew that Enjing had been removed ahead of time and hadn't been able to absorb all the energy on Earth, who knew if she would do it again? If he didn't help anyone and couldn't leave this godforsaken place, he would ultimately be the one to suffer no matter which side. 1. Let's wait and see. Zhou was just about to sit back and see if he could reap the benefits when he suddenly saw a flash in front of him. Enjing's mother had appeared in front of him. The blade of light in her hand slashed at Zhou's neck. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1865 Opening the Path to Destiny. Chapter 1865 Opening the Path to Destiny. The woman was somewhat surprised to see that the Hell Gatekeeper dog would rather suffer serious injuries to protect a human like Zhou. When did these minions of the Devil King become kind ones who love humans? The woman was somewhat puzzled. Regardless of the reason, this gave her an opportunity. Although the uniform on her body was magical, it needed to be recharged. If this continued, it was unknown how long the energy could last. This was energy that she had recharged after sleeping in the charging chamber for an unknown length of time. Now that the charging chamber had been destroyed, it would be even more troublesome to recharge it. The 9 devil pets were extremely terrifying existences. The woman relied on her uniform to suppress them, but it wasn't that simple to kill them. Now that she had discovered such an opportunity, she naturally couldn't miss it. Her goal wasn't to kill Zhou, but to use this human to throw the devil pets into disarray. The devil pets were all smart fellows. Although the woman seemed to have the advantage, they were actually draining the energy of the woman's uniform. The woman originally imagined that when she charged at Zhou, those fellows would definitely risk their lives to save him, but that wasn't the case. The lack of help from the devil pets made her realize that something was amiss. Immortal slaughtering ancient subordinate, and the other devil pets sneered. How could they not tell what the woman was thinking? However, from their point of view, the woman was daydreaming. The reason Hell Gatekeeper dog had risked being injured to help Zhou was that his body was still imprisoned. He had no way of dealing with his situation. Now that Zhou had escaped, how could it be easy to injure him? Just as the blade beam in the woman's hand was about to slash at Zhou's figure suddenly vanished. When he appeared again, he was already behind Immortal slaughtering ancient subordinate.
Everyone, our relationship can only be considered an internal conflict. Why don't we cooperate and finish off the outsiders first? What do you think?
Zhou had already determined that the woman was an extremely dangerous existence. She was even more dangerous than the 9 devil pets. The 9 devil pets were very strong, but their strength was still within Zhou's range of knowledge. As for the woman herself, she wasn't strong, but what she wore exceeded Zhou's understanding. Furthermore, this woman had attacked him without any reason. It was obvious how heartless she was. If she were to escape and return to Earth, who knew what she would do? In comparison, Zhou was more willing to let the 9 devil pets live. After he advanced to the Apocalypse grade, the 9 devil pets wouldn't be an insurmountable problem.
That's right. Kill her first before dealing with the problem between us. Everything can be discussed.
Immortal slaughtering ancient subordinate said with a nod. The other devil pets nodded in agreement. They didn't have the energy to deal with Zhou for now. As the 9 devil pets spoke, they charged forward again and worked in a team to trap the woman. Zhou could clearly see that they weren't really going all out. They were only probing the weakness of the uniform. If they didn't finish off the uniform, they wouldn't be able to kill the woman no matter what. Instead, they would be left in a sorry state by the woman. Zhou cooperated with them by using Sin of All Life, and although they had never worked in a team before, top experts had very similar ideas. Even though this was the first time they were working in a team, it was as though they had already done so countless times. Zhou saw an opportunity. The Sin of All Life struck the woman's uniform, and the powerful force bounced back, nearly injuring Zhou himself. What the hell is this? It's just a uniform, but it's already so strong. What kind of world does she belong to? Zhou was increasingly intrigued by that world. The woman was surprised to discover that the strength of Zhou, a human, had already reached the Apocalypse grade. Furthermore, his realm had caught up to the Apocalypse grade, unlike her who relied on the combat suit. This left her very surprised as she thought to herself, have the humans on Earth already evolved to such a level while I was sleeping to recharge my combat suit? I wonder how my daughter is now. She should have been born, right? In the woman's opinion, if an ordinary human had already evolved to such a level, as the child of Earth, her daughter should be stronger than this human. Although I wasn't able to help her plunder the source of the child of dimension, Earth's uniqueness should be able to allow my daughter to have enough starting capital. Even if she returns home, she should be able to lead a good life. The more the woman thought about it, the more gratified she felt. However, on second thought, her face was filled with bitterness. I stole from that person. Even if I return, there's no place for me. I'm afraid I won't be able to take her home for the rest of my life. The woman didn't regret doing this. If she hadn't done so, her daughter would have long ceased to exist. Since I can't return, I'll become the owner of this world. Let my daughter live here like a princess. The woman's eyes became even more determined as she looked at the 9 devil pets, and Zhou Wen with an increasingly cold expression. Zhou Wen retreated to the back, and was observing the woman's uniform, when he suddenly felt that something was amiss. The 9 devil pets were also smart fellows. They also realized that something was amiss. As they struck out with terrifying strength, they quickly retreated. White streams of light lit up from the woman's white uniform. They condensed into a body of light that formed a sphere formed by overlapping halos. As the halos spun rapidly, they connected with the other halos. Soon, the entire sphere turned into a hole of light as it moved at high speeds. Everything around her was sucked towards the light hole. The huge crystal was sucked into the light hole, and was instantly minced into nothingness. The light hole mercilessly devoured everything. The 9 devil pets and Zhou Wen resisted with all their might, but they were still unable to stop their bodies from moving towards the light hole. Zhou Wen hurriedly used his human realm domain when he saw that the power of the apocalypse devil pets couldn't hinder the suction force produced by the light hole. He never expected the calamity grade human realm domain to be more useful than the apocalypse grade new world powers. He immediately stopped. The 9 devil pets weren't that lucky. Their bodies were slowly pulled towards the light hole. No matter how hard they struggled, they couldn't escape. They could only slow down a little. The full-powered strikes they bombarded at the light hole were also devoured by it. It was futile. Zhou Wen could tell that the power of the light hole didn't belong to this world. Only the power of the lost Immortal Sutra could resist it. Human, we'll open the path to destiny for you. Quickly escape. Immortal slaughtering ancient subordinate shouted, and gave up resisting the suction force of the light hole. He gathered all his strength, and slashed at the void. The other 8 devil pets didn't communicate, but they made the same decision almost at the same time. The 9 powers 7 sins phoenixes in flames, 9 tribulations devil seeds power of the demonic tribulation, hell gatekeeper dogs power to wipe out all life, defy bone spirits power of the defying spirit, devilish trichilio eaters evil eating power, 6 path devil hearts mental demon powers, star devourers devouring power, and Skyfiend consorts Skyfiend power gathered into one, transforming into a pillar of light that pierced through the void and penetrated the bottom of the dimensional airspace. A huge rift appeared in the void. Through the rift, Zhou Wen vaguely saw the stone steps. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1866 Battle of the Heavenly Stairs. Chapter 1866 Battle of the Heavenly Stairs. Zhou Wen was somewhat hesitant when faced with the passageway that the 9 devil pets had opened using their last ounce of strength. He wasn't touched by the actions of the 9 devil pets. They went through this effort for the Devil King and not him, Zhou Wen. There was nothing to be touched about. Zhou Wen was considering a problem. If he left this place, would the woman follow him out? There were 2 possibilities. The woman had the ability to leave this place, so even if Zhou Wen didn't leave, she would still enter the human world in the future. The other possibility was that the woman didn't have the ability to leave this place. Then, it would be terrible if she followed at his heels. Zhou Wen felt that the latter was unlikely. Since the 9 devil pets could tear open the passageway, and the woman's combat strength wasn't inferior to the 9 devil pets, the possibility of her not being able to leave was relatively low. After all, her ship managed to enter previously. What are you waiting for? Leave now. The passageway won't hold. 9 tribulations devil seed roared. Zhou Wen glanced at the 9 devil pets that were struggling bitterly. They were about to be sucked into the hole of light. He then looked at the light hole, and the staircase beyond the passageway. In that case, let's take a gamble. Zhou Wen quickly flew towards the passageway that the 9 devil pets had opened up. At the same time, he summoned demonic neonate and flew with her. That's... The woman's expression changed when she saw demonic neonate. At the instant Zhou Wen rushed out of the passageway, the light hole over the woman's body stopped circulating as she chased after him. She had identified demonic neonate and realized that demonic neonate hadn't recovered the will of the Devil King. This was undoubtedly a pleasant surprise for her. She originally thought that there was no hope of her daughter becoming the child of Dimension, but now that she had discovered such an unexpected opportunity, she had to capture demonic neonate even if she had to give up the chance of killing the 9 devil pets. The 9 devil pets were safe, but there was no joy. Instead, they were alarmed and furious. They wanted to chase after the woman to stop her, but the passageway they had opened had already closed. Quick, tear open another passageway.
We can't let her catch up to Master.
Immortal Slaying Ancient Subordinate said anxiously. The 9 devil pets exerted their strength again and tore open a passageway that connected the lowest level of the dimensional space to the outside. Unfortunately, this passageway had a random element. After they tore open the passageway and rushed out, they found no sign of Zhou Wen or the woman nearby. After Zhou Wen rushed out, he was already on the staircase. The woman rushed out and slashed at him with the blade beam. However, when she arrived in front of him, the woman's body suddenly sank and landed on the stone steps of the staircase. Zhou Wen was delighted when he saw this. The power of the staircase is also effective against her. Zhou Wen was betting that the power of the staircase was effective against the woman. It didn't matter if it didn't have any effect. If it really didn't have any effect, he would rush straight to the Destiny platform and use its power to advance to the Apocalypse grade. He would fight the woman again and see which was stronger, her equipment from some other world or him. Zhou Wen unsummoned demonic neonate and walked up the stone steps. The woman held the blade of light and chased after him. The two of them kept climbing the stairs, one chasing after the other. All the cubes in the world and the dimension lit up. People were surprised to discover 2 humans appear on the cube's screen.
That person seems to be Human Sovereign. Who's that woman? Human Sovereign is attempting the level. Can 2 people enter the Destiny platform at the same time? Why does it look like that woman is hunting down Human Sovereign? Aren't abilities forbidden on the staircase? What's the light blade in the woman's hand?
All the major media outlets quickly began broadcasting. Professor Gu and Sui also began their program.
Professor Gu, do you think that person is Human Sovereign? Why is he being pursued by a woman? Who is that woman?
Sui said as she watched the scene.
Based on available information, the person on the staircase should be Human Sovereign. There's no reliable information on who the woman is. However, from the looks of it, she likely has a deep grudge with Human Sovereign. Otherwise, she wouldn't have chased after Human Sovereign on the staircase.
Professor Gu paused before saying,
From the looks of it, that woman's speed of ascending the staircase isn't slower than Human Sovereign's. It's really surprising. I never expected so many hidden experts to appear among us humans. With their strength, it shouldn't be a problem for these 2 to ascend the Destiny platform. The only problem is, if they both ascend the staircase, how will they rank in this challenge? I really want to know what kind of love-hate relationship this woman has with Human Sovereign. They are actually fighting up the stairs,
Sui said with a smile.
Among us humans, I'm afraid only Human Sovereign and this woman have the ability to do such a thing,
Professor Gu said with a smile. The audience's gossipy souls were also burning. They wanted to know what was going on. Due to the restrictions of the staircase, the woman could only walk up step by step. However, her uniform was indeed magical. Her speed on the staircase was even faster than Zhou Wen's. Thankfully, Zhou Wen could directly ignore the rules of the staircase. However, he deliberately slowed down and didn't rush up the Destiny platform. He only pretended to be as fast as the woman and lured her into following him. Their pursuit continued quickly as they approached the Destiny platform. When they were less than 50 steps away from Destiny platform, the woman's speed clearly slowed down. Zhou Wen also pretended to be affected as he continued luring the woman up. At the end of the day, the woman was only an ordinary person who relied on the combat suit. She was very strong, but her understanding of the essence of strength was far inferior. It was impossible to tell that Zhou Wen had deliberately suppressed his speed. All she wanted was to capture demonic neonate. She relied on her combat suit to charge forward without any regard for the staircase. Zhou Wen saw that there were less than 10 steps left on the staircase and knew that it was about time. He stopped walking up. He couldn't really walk onto the Destiny platform and let that woman rush up. Who knew what would happen? It might be a good or bad outcome, but he didn't wish to take the risk.
Who are you?
Zhou Wen stood on the stone steps and asked the woman. When the woman saw Zhou Wen stop, she didn't immediately rush over. She pointed the blade of light at him and said,
You don't deserve to know who I am. Hand over the Devil King, and I'll spare your life. It's not impossible to hand her over to you. You have to at least give me a reason.
Although Zhou Wen had already roughly guessed the situation, it was ultimately just speculation. He wanted to know the truth personally.
Die or hand her over. You have no choice.
The woman walked towards Zhou Wen step by step. From the looks of it, she wasn't in the mood to chat with him.
Who lives or dies is still up in the air.
Zhou Wen knew that he couldn't get anything out of her, so he pulled out the Human Sovereign stone saber and spread out the 6 wings on his back. Terrifying energy gathered towards him. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1867 Battle of the Heavenly Stairs 2. Chapter 1867 Battle of the Heavenly Stairs 2. Zhou Wen rose into the air, spread his 6 pairs of wings, and raised the Human Sovereign's ancient saber in his hand. The power of the world gathered on him. The woman struggled to fly into the sky. Her legs seemed to be nailed to the stone steps, making it difficult for her to step off.
First slash. Life.
The woman held the blade of light, and wanted to use immortal slaughtering ancient subordinates immortal slaying again. However, those forces couldn't be used on the staircase. There was no reaction from the blade beams. The only strength she could muster was the energy of her combat suit. She couldn't use any strength related to this world. The woman stood on the stone steps, and could only watch helplessly as infinite strength gathered on Zhou. She gritted her teeth and continued walking upward. Although she wasn't good at combat, and didn't have a very high realm, she wasn't stupid. On the contrary, the woman was very smart. She had already guessed that she could only regain her freedom after finishing the stairs. Scaling the last few steps became harder and harder. Even with the support of the combat suit, it was still difficult for her. However, she still managed to walk, and her speed wasn't very slow. Zhou originally wanted to gather more strength, but seeing that she was in no way slow, he didn't have the time to continue channeling greater strength. Zhou swung the human sovereign stone saber in his hand at the woman, and the terrifying nomological force turned into a strange saber beam that went for her head. Clang! The woman swung her blade at the saber beam formed by sin of all life. The collision resulted in the snapping of the saber beam. This outcome was already within Zhou's expectations. His body was like a flying immortal, as he blinked about in the sky and slashed at the woman from all directions. The woman brandished her blade of light to parry the incoming saber beams, but she failed to block them all. Some of the saber beams were snapped by her, while others struck her. The saber beam that could slice through a planet only caused light patterns to ripple on the woman's uniform upon contact. They failed to slice through it. What's up with that uniform? Zhou frowned. When the woman saw that Zhou's saber beam couldn't tear through her combat suit, she stopped fighting him. As she brandished her blade, she tried her best to sever Zhou's saber beam as she walked toward the destiny platform at the end of the stairs. Even so, Zhou's saber beams only made the woman grunt in pain without producing much of an effect. Zhou knew that it was useless to continue slashing with only about 10 stone steps left ahead of the woman, so he summoned Demonic Neonate again. After Demonic Neonate came out, she took the opportunity, while Zhou was attacking the woman, to immediately throw the Vajrachakram at the woman's head. Bang! The Vajrachakram smashed into the unprepared woman's head, causing her hat to collapse as though it had hit her head. The woman's body swayed as though she was drunk and nearly fell onto the stone steps. Her expression didn't look too good, but she still stood firm and accelerated towards the destiny platform. Bang! Bang! Demonic Neonate constantly threw out the Vajrachakram, causing the woman to stagger. Cracks appeared on her combat suit. The woman gritted her teeth and endured the pain as she continued walking up with all her might. Demonic Neonate retracted the Vajrachakram when she saw this. She grabbed the sides of the Vajrachakram with both hands and aimed it at the woman like she was aiming a mirror at her. The Vajrachakram could envelop all things, but when the woman was within its sights, it failed to suck her in. Zhou was even more certain of his guess when he saw this. The woman didn't belong to this world to begin with, so the Vajrachakram's ability was useless against her. It wasn't as effective as physical attacks. There were only 4 stone steps left in front of the woman. If she rushed up, who knew what would happen? Zhou gritted his teeth and flashed behind the woman. Human Sovereign Stone Saber slashed at her body again. This time, Zhou didn't use the sin of all life, but in the human world. The spot he attacked was also where the combat suit had been torn apart by the Vajrachakram. The Human Sovereign Stone Saber slashed at the tear in the combat suit and actually made progress. The blade sliced through her flesh as blood gushed out. The woman's flesh was extremely tough. Zhou's full-powered strike only sliced through her flesh without reaching her bones. He slashed at the woman again and again while Demonic Neonate constantly threw out the Vajrachakram, smashing it on the woman's head, causing her to stagger. The woman was attacked from both sides. She staggered and was close to collapsing. Coupled with the suppression from the stone steps, she couldn't take another step up. The people watching the battle were somewhat stunned. They didn't understand why Human Sovereign would kill a human woman. The human woman's combat strength was shockingly powerful. She managed to hold on, and not succumb despite Human Sovereign's barrage of attacks. However, they didn't know if they should cheer Human Sovereign on. For a moment, there was silence as the atmosphere became extremely heavy. After all, they were both humans. No one knew who was in the right. Furthermore, it looked like the woman was being trounced by Zhou. Women, children, and the elderly were more easily considered weak, and humans had an innate pity for the weak. Although they felt that it was impossible for Human Sovereign to kill a woman for no reason, no one felt that Human Sovereign's murder was a good idea. Professor Gu, any thoughts? Sui didn't understand the current situation and consulted Professor Gu. Professor Gu pondered and said,
It's unlikely human sovereign would kill someone for no reason, much less under such circumstances. Furthermore, in the beginning, it was that woman who was chasing after human sovereign. I think there must be a reason for this. Human sovereign definitely has his reasons.
The people watching the program sighed when they heard Professor Gu's words.
It's over, it's over. Now that Professor Gu has opened his mouth, human sovereign's reputation is probably ruined. Holy sh*t, with Professor Gu being such a jinx, don't tell me human sovereign is about to become some devil? Amitabha, please don't let it happen.
The woman brandished the blade beam and desperately blocked Zhou Wen's human sovereign stone saber and Vajrachakram. She endured her injuries and took another step up the stone steps. Zhou Wen saw that there were only 3 stone steps left ahead of her. The woman was still seeking an opportunity to head up, so he was also burning with anxiety. In the human world, along with the human sovereign stone saber, could only slice through the woman's flesh. Her body was definitely not inferior to an apocalypse creature's. Seeing that the woman had taken another step and was only 2 steps away from Destiny platform, Zhou Wen knew that he couldn't stop her if this continued. Zhou Wen gritted his teeth and landed on the last stone step. Demonic Neonate sat on his shoulder as the two faced the woman below. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1868 Combat Suit. Chapter 1868 Combat Suit. When the woman saw Zhou Wen stand in front of her, her eyes immediately burned with killing intent. The reason she was in a passive position was that she was trapped by the staircase and couldn't touch him. But now, Zhou Wen was right in front of her, inches away. The anger and humiliation in her heart had reached an extreme. The energy in her combat suit erupted as the blade of light in her hand transformed into a stream that slashed at Zhou Wen's waist. Faced with this slash, Zhou Wen abandoned the human sovereign stone saber and took a step forward. Instead, he approached the woman and grabbed her with one hand. The woman's blade beam that slashed at Zhou Wen's waist stopped. Not only did it not slash down, but it was also repelled. Zhou Wen approached the woman and blocked her wrist with his palm. At such a close distance, the woman's blade beam couldn't slash down.
You are very strong. Unfortunately, you don't have the ability to control these powers,
Zhou Wen said as his entire body moved. At this virtually zero distance, Zhou Wen's entire body transformed into a lethal weapon. His fingers, palm, fist, elbow, knee, crotch, leg, foot, shoulder, anywhere could produce shocking strength. The woman's strength stemmed from the combat suit, as well as the combat analysis and calculation ability it gave her. However, this distance was too close. Before the woman could understand the combat suit's analysis, Zhou Wen had already delivered multiple attacks. Bam! 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 Zhou Wen's attacks rained down on the woman like a storm, rendering her unable to counterattack. The woman flailed her arms with all her might, hoping to counterattack, but her attacks were blocked by Zhou Wen. She couldn't injure him at all. Zhou Wen could move freely on the steps unlike the woman. In an instant, the woman's body and head suffered countless blows. Thankfully, the combat suit's defense and her body were strong enough to withstand the attacks. Despite burning with rage, the woman could only suffer the beating. She had strength, but it was useless. Boom! The combat suit emitted a glow as the woman activated the light hole-like ability again. This ability came from the combat suit. It was different from the abilities of this world, so the staircase couldn't restrict it. The woman had refrained from using this ability because it expended a lot of the combat suit's energy. When she used it previously, she had already expended most of the energy that the combat suit had painstakingly charged up. If she used it again, the combat suit's energy would probably be exhausted. Seeing the halo spin faster and faster around the woman and about to turn into a hole of light, Zhou Wen only took a step back with a sneer and unsummoned demonic neonate. The light hole took form and sucked everything nearby into it. It was a force even the 9 devil pets couldn't resist. Zhou Wen, who was inches away, didn't seem to react at all. He stood there and looked coldly at the woman. He didn't use in the human world to resist the suction force of the light hole. Instead, he completely removed the power to resist the taboo, causing his body to be affected by the staircase and be nailed to the last stone step. He could sense the powerful suction force of the light hole. At the same time, the power of the staircase pinned him motionless. 2 terrifying forces constantly pulled at Zhou Wen's body. This was a clash between the powers of 2 worlds. It no longer had much to do with Zhou Wen himself. He only used his own strength to ingeniously connect the 2 powers. And the current situation was like 2 strongmen doing a tug-of-war, and Zhou Wen was the rope. Is the power of that world stronger, or the power of this world stronger? Let's decide the victor here. Zhou Wen looked at the woman. He had already guessed that the woman's ability would definitely expend a lot of energy. Otherwise, she would have used it again after the initial beating. Zhou Wen only needed to use the power of the staircase to expend all her energy to win. Without the help of the combat suit, the woman was nothing. At the very least, in the field of combat, the woman was nothing. The woman clearly realized the problem, but the light hole had already been activated. Even if she stopped the light hole now, the energy in her combat suit would be depleted. The woman knew that she had no choice. This was her final gamble. It was life or death. She never expected to be forced into such a state by a human. Ever since she came to this world, she had never suffered such a huge loss. Perhaps it was because she had stayed in this world for too long that she felt a sense of superiority in this world. She felt that she was a higher level creature. The creatures in this world were just a group of uncivilized primitives, or even beasts. Having been forced to this point, the woman gradually recalled who she was. She was just an ordinary mother. In that world, she was just an ordinary woman. What gave her the right to look down on other humans? Only as a mother could she complete the tremendous feat in order to give her daughter a chance of survival. Although she had caused a terrible disaster and never dared to return to that world again, she had no regrets. I haven't seen my daughter yet. I can't die. The woman looked at Zhou Wen with an increasingly determined expression. In the next moment, the woman did something shocking. The combat suit on her body suddenly peeled off. The combat suit cracked open without any warning. It peeled off the woman's body and enveloped Zhou Wen. The woman was only left with a set of white tights. There were wounds everywhere from Zhou Wen's slashes, and many of the wounds were still bleeding. However, the woman's eyes were filled with smugness because she knew that she was about to win. Zhou Wen was doomed. She had stolen this combat suit from someone she could only look up to for the rest of her life. If it wasn't for the fact that she had obtained the activation passcode for it, she would never have the right to come into contact with such a combat suit. The woman already knew through the manual the consequences of gaining illegal access to the combat suit. If someone illegally wore the combat suit, it would immediately activate the emergency invasive mode. It would use the hidden energy in the combat suit to completely eliminate the person who wore it by force. This was something created by the godlike woman. How could the people of this world withstand it? The moment Zhou Wen was enveloped by the combat suit, the woman knew that he was doomed. Although losing her combat suit greatly weakened her combat strength in this world, she could only barely be considered at the apocalypse grade with her own body. However, as long as she could live, she didn't care about any of this. All she wanted now was to see her daughter. The combat suit enveloped Zhou Wen's body and instantly, it clung tightly to him. The cracks vanished. White patterns of light appeared on the combat suit as the light became brighter and brighter. It made Zhou Wen look like a humanoid object condensed from white light, or a nuclear reactor that could explode at any moment. Zhou Wen was alarmed. He wanted to tear the combat suit apart, but he couldn't. Die! The woman looked coldly at Zhou Wen, waiting for him to be eliminated by the combat suit. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1869 Successful Matching. Chapter 1869 Successful Matching. Zhou Wen felt that the uniform that enveloped his body was nurturing terrifying energy, as though it would explode at any moment. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't tear off his clothes. There was clearly a crack previously, but he couldn't find it no matter how hard he tried. Just as he was reeling in shock, he suddenly heard a voice in his mind. System matching successful. Combat suit connection successful. Energy source matching successful. Combat suit system fully activated. Charging. Repairing. After the voice came to an end, Zhou Wen immediately felt the lost immortal sutra in his body circulate crazily as the energy in his body flowed into the combat suit. Light threads appeared over the cracks in the previously damaged combat suit. The light threads intertwined and quickly repaired the cracks, leaving not a single mark. Instantly, Zhou Wen felt that his body was about to be drained. He hurriedly spread out the 6 wings on his back and activated the sin of all life. Energy surged into Zhou Wen's body. The woman looked at him in surprise, as her eyes gradually widened in disbelief. How? How can he activate the combat suit? This is impossible. The woman couldn't accept that the humans of this world could activate the combat suit. The combat suit didn't belong to this world at all, nor could it be activated by the humans of this world. This had nothing to do with one's strength. The system was completely different. This was like a person from a world of technology picking up an immortal cultivator's flying sword and managed to fly with it. How could that happen? However, the combat suit had clearly been activated. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to self-repair. Instantly, the woman thought of a possibility, but this possibility made her find it even more impossible. Could it be that he has mastered the lost immortal sutra? That's impossible. The woman repeatedly denied her thoughts. Back then, she had stolen some experimental objects from the godlike existence, the experimenter and some experimental objects on board. Apart from the combat suit, cell phone, and phone accessories, there was also the lost immortal sutra and something that could allow her to return from this world. She had deliberately stolen the other items. The combat suit was something she needed. Without the combat suit, she couldn't dig out the Earth Companion egg, nor could she let her daughter replace Earth's companion egg, much less snatch the essence of the Devil King's child of dimension. The phone and accessories were prepared for her daughter. With the phone and accessories, her daughter could quickly grow in this world after she was born. However, being able to obtain Lost Immortal Sutra exceeded her expectations. This was because the Lost Immortal Sutra had been beside the phone when she stole it. Back then, the woman couldn't believe her luck. Lost Immortal Sutra was a cultivation technique cultivated by the godlike existence. It was also a famous cultivation technique in that world. The woman was thrilled to obtain it. Later, after she entered this world on the experimenter, she tried cultivating it but met with failure. This left her very disappointed. The woman originally wanted to leave the Lost Immortal Sutra and phone to her daughter, hoping that she could cultivate it in the future. However, an accident happened. She imagined that no one in this world could match her after her successful instigation of all the races to eliminate the Devil King. Just as she was about to implement her plan to become the Lord of the Dimension, her plan was ruined by the Immortal Arch. She was nearly killed by her. Although she ultimately defeated the Immortal Arch with her fully charged combat suit, she was still severely injured. Furthermore, the combat suit's energy was completely exhausted. She had no choice but to hide in the charging chamber to recuperate. Back then, the phone and some other things had been lost in that battle, including the Lost Immortal Sutra. Even the Earth Companion egg she had dug out and planned on giving to her daughter was gone. The woman didn't have the time to search for it. All she could do was wait for the day she was reborn. Thankfully, she had made a bet after defeating the Immortal Arch. She got the Immortal Emperor to help her guard Chess Mountain to prevent her daughter from being disturbed and allow her to successfully grow to the day she was born. Now, it was suspected that someone had mastered the Lost Immortal Sutra. How could she believe it? As a person from a high-level world, she couldn't master it. She couldn't accept that a person from a low-level world could master it. However, the truth was right before her eyes. The woman had no choice but to accept it. The human in front of her had indeed mastered the Lost Immortal Sutra. The energy in the woman's body flowed uncontrollably towards Showun. Without the protection of the combat suit, she couldn't withstand the power of sin of all life. The woman gritted her teeth and walked forward, hoping to complete the final step and pass Showun to ascend Destiny Platform. She didn't know the purpose of the Destiny Platform, but she had to do something. Otherwise, once Showun completely controlled the combat suit, she probably wouldn't stand a chance of survival. Ignoring the fact that Showun now possessed the combat suit, even if he didn't have one, the woman knew that she wasn't his match. However, without the help of the combat suit, although her physique was strong, she felt like she was carrying a mountain on the staircase. The woman walked up a step with great difficulty. As long as she walked past Showun, she could reach Destiny Platform with one final step. However, no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't lift her leg. She couldn't take the final step. To ascend the Destiny Platform, one didn't just rely on strength. One's willpower and realm were also very important. The woman's willpower wasn't weak, but her realm was much weaker. She couldn't raise her foot for this final step no matter what. The stone steps were about to finish falling. They were closing in on the last step where the woman and Showun were standing. I definitely can't go back. I definitely can't. The woman thought of her girl. She didn't know where she found the strength to step onto Destiny Platform before the stone steps fell. The moment the woman stood on the Destiny Platform, the last stone step fell, taking Showun down with it. On the Destiny Platform, infinite energy gathered and surged towards the woman's body. When the woman felt the infinite energy surge into her body, she was immediately pleasantly surprised, one that exceeded her expectations. With such terrifying energy injected into her body, she could use this power to advance further. She might even have a chance of becoming a true powerhouse. Showun fell with the stone steps, hoping to use his strength to escape the suppression of the staircase's rules. He didn't wish to enter the bottom of the dimensional space again. However, almost all the energy in his body had been drained by the combat suit. Sin of all life could absorb energy as fast as the combat suit. How could he have the ability to use those powers to remove the restrictions of the staircase? Just as he was feeling depressed, he suddenly heard the combat suit's voice in his mind. Energy source discovered. It can be converted and absorbed. Do you want to head to the energy source to convert and absorb energy? Yes. Showun made his choice without any hesitation. The combat suit was magical. It could understand Showun's words. In the next second, he felt the combat suit erupt with terrifying energy. Light pattern surged across the combat suit, propelling his body away from the stone steps and flying towards Destiny Platform. The energy that erupted from the combat suit was even stronger than when it was on the woman. Even the rules of the staircase couldn't completely restrain it. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1870 Master-Disciple Battle. Chapter 1870 Master-Disciple Battle. The woman was crazily absorbing energy when she suddenly felt most of the energy that surged into her body decrease. The woman looked up and couldn't help but be stunned. She saw Zhou Wen floating on Destiny platform in the combat suit. The energy that was surging towards her was now surging towards the combat suit. The combat suit had absorbed terrifying amounts of energy. Not only was the damage from before rapidly healing, but it was also rapidly being charged. The woman was alarmed and furious. She instantly felt utmost regret. Not only had she given away the combat suit, but even the opportunity that belonged to her had been snatched away. The woman leaped up angrily and punched the combat suit. The combat suit only rippled with light patterns without being dealt any damage. Her attacks were completely useless against it. Unwilling to give up, the woman repeatedly smashed at the combat suit, but it was to no avail. Bang! A light pattern flashed on the combat suit as the woman's body was sent flying, and she fell off the Destiny platform. Boundless energy surged towards the combat suit. Zhou Wen could sense that the energy in the combat suit was becoming stronger.
Charging combat suit. 2%. 7%. 10%. 16%.
The energy reserves of the combat suit constantly increased, but the woman could only watch helplessly as the energy was snatched away by the combat suit as she fell into the bottomless abyss. Zhou Wen had previously seen how terrifying the energy of the Destiny platform was. It could allow ordinary creatures to advance to the Apocalypse grade, but such terrifying energy only charged the combat suit to 19%. The energy on the Destiny platform gradually vanished and didn't descend upon him again. It ultimately ended with a 19% charge. The cube scene vanished at this point and turned into the rankings. However, there wasn't any additional ranking on the board. There were only the people who had been on the rankings previously.
What's going on?
Everyone was confused. The woman and human sovereign had ascended the Destiny platform, but why weren't their names on the rankings? This was somewhat strange. Even if the woman was knocked off the Destiny platform, human sovereign's name should have appeared. However, his name was missing. Zhou Wen flew down, hoping to grab the woman and get to the bottom of the truth. The woman plummeted. It looked like she was about to fall to the bottom of the dimensional airspace again. Zhou Wen was just about to chase after her and stop her when he suddenly saw a figure flash. A man in white clothes with crystal-like dragon horns on his head appeared beside the woman. He reached out and grabbed her shoulder, immediately stopping her from falling. Zhou Wen flew to the man who was pressing down on the woman with one hand, preventing her from escaping. He frowned and said,
"What are you trying to do? You don't even call me teacher anymore?"
Wang Mingyuan held down the woman with one hand and sighed at Zhou Wen.
"My teacher died when he plotted to kill Zhongxia and Jiangyan,"
Zhou Wen said coldly.
"This world isn't a fairy tale world. You have to learn to accept reality."
Wang Mingyuan sighed.
"If I'm as numb as a rock, I might as well die."
Zhou Wen looked at the woman restrained by Wang Mingyuan and said,
"Let her go. What if I say no? Are you going to kill me?"
Wang Mingyuan said with a smile. Zhou Wen didn't say a word as he pulled out the human sovereign stone saber and aimed it at Wang Mingyuan. This woman was the key to solving all the mysteries. No matter what, he couldn't let her fall into Wang Mingyuan's hands.
"Fine by me. Let me see what you've learned over the years,"
Wang Mingyuan said with a smile as he floated in the air and held the woman down with one hand. Zhou Wen didn't waste his breath. The human sovereign stone saber in his hand tore through the void and instantly slashed in front of Wang Mingyuan. The light patterns on the combat suit surged, raising Zhou Wen's strength and speed. The might of this strike was no weaker than the 9 Tribulations Devil Seed strength. Wang Mingyuan waved his hand and flicked the side of human sovereign stone saber, causing it to deviate from its trajectory. Following the force of Wang Mingyuan's flick, Zhou Wen spun the human sovereign stone saber in his hand and drew an arc as he slashed at Wang Mingyuan even faster and more ruthlessly. Clang! 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 Every time Zhou Wen's saber approached Wang Mingyuan, the blade would be deflected by him. As for Zhou Wen, he would use the momentum of the deflected trajectory to slash at him again. One strike after another, the strength and speed of the saber became faster and faster. This was no longer a simple battle. The strength of the two of them constantly snowballed on human sovereign stone saber. The power on the saber had already reached a horrendous level. If one didn't control their strength well, they would suffer a backlash from the duo's combined strength accumulated on the saber.
"Your techniques are sublime, but it's still a little lacking. You haven't completely realized their full potential,"
Wang Mingyuan said slowly, as he flicked away the human sovereign stone saber again. Zhou Wen didn't say a word as he slashed the human sovereign stone saber over.
"Fuse with the heavenly Tao and understand the will of the heavens. What you want is to let nature take its course. It's not natural enough. You have to focus on realizing the general trend and not waste your time on the details.
Wang Mingyuan said, as he repelled the human sovereign stone saber again, while fighting Zhou Wen.
What's the general trend?
Zhou Wen finally spoke, but the saber in his hand didn't stop.
It's cold in early spring. It might prompt one to buy warm clothing without realizing that it's winter's last hurrah. The coming summer is the general trend,
Wang Mingyuan said.
I don't know when summer will come. I'll buy warm clothing for tonight's cold because the present is all that I know,
Zhou Wen said.
You are a child. You can be willful,
Wang Mingyuan said with a smile.
The willful ones might not be all children. Some elders are even more willful.
The two of them pointed their sabers at each other, but their mouths weren't idle. The power on the saber grew stronger and stronger, almost to the point of losing control. Suddenly, Zhou Wen retracted his saber and took a step back. He held the hilt in one hand and pressed the back of the saber with the other. The blade kept trembling due to the terrifying power. The terrifying power was suppressed by Zhou Wen's palm as it gradually dissipated.
When one was trying to control the floods by blocking the source of water, that only met with failure. His son used the method of diverting water to resolve the floods. Don't you understand that the principle of diverting water is better than blocking it?
Wang Mingyuan sighed as he looked at Zhou Wen's actions.
I've never been a smart person. You should have known this very well when you taught me back then.
Zhou Wen completely dispelled the power on the saber, as he held the hilt of the human sovereign stone saber with both hands and slowly raised it above his head.
That's true. Back then, when I got the few of you to pull the dragon lock chain, you were the most inflexible one.
Wang Mingyuan seemed to recall the past as a smile appeared on his lips.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that,
Zhou Wen remarked.
Child, this world isn't as simple as black and white.
Wang Mingyuan sighed.
Black is black. White is white. If you can't tell black from white, it's because you can't see the essence at its core.
Zhou Wen had already raised the human sovereign stone saber above his head and stared at Wang Mingyuan. He slowly said,
Now let go of her. Sorry, I can't do as you wish.
Wang Mingyuan answered indifferently. Zhou Wen didn't say anything else as he slashed down with the human sovereign stone saber. Terrifying power condensed into a blade that tore through space and slashed at Wang Mingyuan. Wang Mingyuan's expression froze slightly as a sword flew out of his sleeve and flew towards Zhou Wen's human sovereign stone saber. That sword was none other than the immortal culling sword that Zhou Wen often used. When the saber and sword clashed, a shockwave that spanned thousands of kilometers reverberated. Thankfully, there was nothing in the dimensional airspace. Otherwise, everything would have been destroyed. Wang Mingyuan revealed a look of surprise. The immortal culling sword in his hand had been struck away by Zhou Wen's strike. It deviated to the side, as the human sovereign stone saber continued slashing at Wang Mingyuan. Thank you for reading on. Chapter 1871 One Master Disciple Battle 2. Chapter 1871 Master Disciple Battle 2. Clang. Another sword appeared in front of Wang Mingyuan and blocked the human sovereign stone saber. Nah. The human sovereign stone saber's force remained boundless. After sending the sword flying, it continued slashing at Wang Mingyuan. Clang. Clang. Another two swords appeared in front of Wang Mingyuan and blocked the human sovereign stone saber in the form of a cross. Finally, they fully defended against the human sovereign stone saber.
The power of the other world is indeed interesting.
Wang Mingyuan threw out the immortal culling sword that flew into the air. The four swords surrounded and trapped Zhou Wen inside. This was the first time Zhou Wen had seen the complete four immortal vanquishing swords. The four swords emitted terrifying might. Just the sword intent from the swords could wipe away the will to kill. The four swords moved as sword beams crisscrossed. The sword beams intertwined like lightning in a bid to slay Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen's eyes were clear as he brandished the human sovereign stone saber with both hands. He didn't make any unnecessary movements as he blocked the attacks from the four immortal vanquishing swords. The combat suit provided him with potent energy, allowing him to fight an apocalypse expert at Wang Mingyuan's level without being at a disadvantage. He even had the advantage. One had to know that Wang Mingyuan had absorbed the power of countless apocalypse-grade experts. He was so powerful that no one in the world could match him. The energy of the combat suit allowed Zhou Wen to fight him without being at a disadvantage. This was absolutely amazing. Bang! Zhou Wen suddenly slashed out, sending the four immortal vanquishing swords flying. The four immortal vanquishing swords that had been swept away flew back to Wang Mingyuan's side. Wang Mingyuan looked at Zhou Wen's combat suit and said,
You're actually immune to the taboo power of the four immortal vanquishing swords. It's no wonder she could use that combat suit to defeat the immortal arch back then. You know about her?
Zhou Wen stopped when he heard that, and didn't continue attacking Wang Mingyuan.
Back then, your father, Ouyang Ting, Jing Daoxian, and I entered Chess Mountain together and got lost inside. We took different paths. Finally, Ouyang Ting and I boarded the ship from another world and found something on it.
Wang Mingyuan said.
What did you find?
Zhou Wen immediately asked. He had found almost nothing on the ship previously. It turned out that the useful things had long been taken away by Wang Mingyuan and Ouyang Ting. However, Wang Mingyuan didn't say what he and Ouyang Ting had found on the ship. Instead, he said,
Jing Daoxian and your father didn't reach the ship. The place they went should be where the Immortal Arch was imprisoned. That Immortal Arch lost unjustly. She only lost because she didn't understand the other world. If not for the unequal information, how could she have lost to such a person?
Wang Mingyuan glanced at the woman, who was restrained by him.
The energy of the other world is stronger than the energy of this world, but their order in life might not be higher than ours. Although that Immortal Arch was defeated because of the unequal information, she wasn't someone who would be at the mercy of others. In that battle, she secretly took something that originally belonged to a woman. Furthermore, when Jing Daoxian barged in, she deliberately let him obtain it.
Zhou Wen knew that he was talking about the Lost Immortal Sutra. Only today did he realize that the Lost Immortal Sutra came from the Arch.
Your father was able to take Jing out of Chess Mountain because of that Immortal Arch. Otherwise, with your father's abilities back then, how could he have taken Jing away, who was in the core mint to replace Earth's companion beast?
Wang Mingyuan's words left Zhou Wen alarmed.
You know that Jing is the baby my father brought out?
Zhou Wen said in surprise.
I didn't know that before. Only after I took you in as my disciple did I realize that you were definitely not that baby. Although your father's cultivation talent isn't much, he's still considered a talent. He is unpredictable and creative. Only he could think of replacing Jing with you. He lied to me, Ouyang Ting, and Jing Daoxian. He's the only one in the world who can lie to the three of us. Since you knew that Jing was the baby, why didn't you attack her?
Zhou Wen frowned.
Why should I?
Wang Mingyuan asked.
Because she's Earth's companion beast. Isn't that what you want?
Zhou Wen said.
Before I boarded the ship, that was indeed what I wanted. However, after seeing what was on the ship, Earth's companion beast was already useless to me. Or rather, it wasn't what I wanted to begin with.
Wang Mingyuan's eyes shimmered with a strange glint.
What did you see on the ship?
Zhou Wen couldn't help but ask again.
I saw another possibility.
Wang Mingyuan didn't elaborate. He glanced at the woman and said,
I want to enter the other world, but my strength to this very day can't open the passageway to enter that world. Therefore, I need her. What possibility?
Zhou Wen also looked at the woman. The woman didn't say a word. Wang Mingyuan didn't say anything as he looked at Zhou Wen and said,
It's time for you to leave. The combat suit on you might be able to defeat Immortal Arch, but it's useless against me. This is because I've already figured out that world. These things are no longer a mystery to me. I don't know much about it, so I want to know more. Therefore, it's best you leave this woman with me.
Zhou Wen brandished his saber again and slashed at Wang Mingyuan.
Must we fight?
Wang Mingyuan sighed and extended his hand. The 4 immortal vanquishing swords flew into his hand and fused into one, turning into a sword. Clang! The clash of blades didn't produce a shockwave this time. Zhou Wen felt the power of his combat suit flow towards Wang Mingyuan like a dam. Zhou Wen was very familiar with this power. It was Jiang Yan's ability. However, Wang Mingyuan had improved it. He was better and more terrifying than Jiang Yan. With a thought, Zhou Wen activated Sin of All Life. His body immediately absorbed external forces, like Wang Mingyuan. Both parties were absorbing energy. Immediately, it was like a tug of war. Zhou Wen couldn't absorb Wang Mingyuan's energy, and neither could Wang Mingyuan absorb his. The sword in Wang Mingyuan's hand suddenly pressed down. As he absorbed the power, he could also suppress his opponent. Furthermore, the power on the sword became stronger and stronger. The more pressure Zhou Wen gave him, the stronger Wang Mingyuan's sword became. He actually fused Jiang Yan and Zhong Zia's powers into one. Zhou Wen's anger gradually rose. He knew that Wang Mingyuan was deliberately provoking him by using Zhong Zia and Jiang Yan's strength in front of him. But that didn't matter because Zhou Wen was really furious. Zhou Wen's strength erupted as the human realm domain replaced the Sin of All Life. Human Sovereign Stone Saber slashed again, but this time, it was powered by in the human world. In the human world was only a calamity grade skill, but with the augmentation of the combat suit's energy, it now possessed the strength of the apocalypse grade. Clang! Human realm's first slash sent the sword in Wang Mingyuan's hand flying. The second slash forced Wang Mingyuan to release his grip on the woman and retreat. The third slash shattered the seemingly long distance in front of Wang Mingyuan, as the blade came slashing in front of him. Chapter 1872 Master-Disciple Battle 3 Chapter 1872 Master-Disciple Battle 3 Wang Mingyuan couldn't dodge the third strike. He suddenly extended his hands and clamped down on Zhou Wen's human sovereign stone saber. With the augmentation of the combat suit, the power of the human sovereign stone saber was unparalleled. Wang Mingyuan's hands were blasted away as his body plummeted like a meteor. The woman regained her freedom and immediately fled in one direction. How could Zhou Wen let her escape? The answer to all the mysteries lay with her. He had to capture her and interrogate her. The woman hadn't flown far when Zhou Wen appeared in front of her and struck out with small perfection of wisdom strength. The force pressed down on the woman like a huge palm that blotted out the sky. The woman raised her palms to resist, but the crashing palm pinned her to her spot.
Where are you from?
Zhou Wen asked the woman. Before the woman could answer, a flying sword slashed at Zhou Wen from the sky. Zhou Wen brandished his saber and sent the four fused immortal vanquishing swords flying. However, Wang Mingyuan appeared in front of him like a ghost as he grabbed at his chest. Zhou Wen had no choice but to give up on suppressing the woman and raise his palm to parry with Wang Mingyuan. A terrifying shockwave immediately swept across the sky like a tsunami. The two of them fought an intense battle while vying for the woman. The woman had never suffered so terribly ever since coming to this world. Although she had been injured in the battle with the Immortal Arch, she had never suffered such humiliation. Zhou Wen and Wang Mingyuan treated her like fish on a chopping board. They could grab her however they wanted. More importantly, she couldn't muster any resistance. Without the combat suit, the woman's combat strength was on a completely different level from theirs. During the battle, Zhou Wen discovered the magical aspects of the combat suit. In battle, the combat suit constantly analyzed the enemy's various stats. Wang Mingyuan's various energy attributes, speed, strength, and other information would directly be reflected into Zhou Wen's brain. There were even various countermeasures and solutions listed, as well as some of the functions of the combat suit itself. For example, the light blade that the woman had been using was one of the combat suit's functions. The light hole ability that the woman used was also one of the combat suit's functions. However, using these functions required the combat suit to expend its stored energy, especially the light hole skill. It consumed 1% of its energy every second. The remaining energy in the combat suit only had enough for slightly over 10 seconds. This 1% energy burn per second referred to the lowest power output. If the power of the hole was increased, the energy expenditure would be even faster. Apart from that, Zhou Wen also saw many functions. He had never seen the woman use these functions. He didn't know if it was because the woman hadn't used them due to the lack of energy, or if she didn't know that they existed. One of the automatic combat functions piqued his interest. It wasn't that he wanted to completely rely on the combat suit, but he could pry into the combat methods of that world through the combat suit. Zhou Wen attempted to activate automatic combat mode before he felt his body being rapidly moved by the combat suit. The light patterns on the combat suit made the combat suit charge at Wang Mingyuan at an unbelievable speed. Was the human brain stronger than a computer? Zhou Wen didn't know the answer, but the combat suit's reaction was indeed faster than humans. It could instantly calculate the enemy's various parameters and attack their weakness in the simplest and most effective way. Furthermore, any reaction was almost synchronized with the body. To be able to make a judgment in an instant and receive feedback from the body was fascinating. Even with Wang Mingyuan's strength, he was at a disadvantage fighting the combat suit. Even someone as strong as Wang Mingyuan didn't have a brain comparable to the combat suit. In close combat, his body was repeatedly hit by the combat suit. Bang! The fist of the combat suit emitted light as it struck Wang Mingyuan's chest, sending him flying tens of thousands of kilometers. Zhou Wen turned around and chased after the fleeing woman. Before he could grab her, the immortal vanquishing sword flew over again, forcing the combat suit to dodge. Wang Mingyuan appeared opposite Zhou Wen and blocked his path.
The technology of that world is indeed magical. Even the brain of an apocalypse-grade creature can't keep up with such analysis and reaction. However, such an ability has its weaknesses. It's easy for me to crack it.
The combat suit wasn't Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen might stop to listen to him, but the combat suit wouldn't. Light patterns flashed on its body as it charged forward like a combat machine.
Life isn't as simple as processing data. No matter how powerful a computer is, it can't calculate all the possibilities of a chaotic system. Our brains, on the other hand, can infinitely approach that threshold.
Wang Mingyuan slowly stabbed out. This strike was very slow, so slow that it was incomprehensible. However, such a slow strike caused the combat suit to fall into a frenzy of calculations. It was as though the CPU was overloaded and was hanging. It failed to react in time. Suddenly, a blade of light flashed as Wang Mingyuan's clothes were sliced open, revealing his chest that was covered in fine transparent scales. A bloody mark appeared on the scales as blood seeped out. Wang Mingyuan extended his finger and wiped the blood from his chest. His fingertip brushed past his lips and tasted the blood.
I forgot. You've already grown up. There's no need for me to teach you. You already know everything I know,
Wang Mingyuan said with a sigh. Zhou was also observing the combat suit's various modes. He also noticed the flaws of the combat suit. No matter how strong its computing ability was, it was impossible to calculate infinite values. However, although it was difficult to get an exact value, a human's brain could rely on feelings to infinitely approach the correct value. This feeling was very difficult to understand. If Wang Mingyuan could do it, Zhou could do it as well. However, Wang Mingyuan didn't treat Zhou as a true opponent. He never expected Zhou to be able to do this, so he was injured by him.
From the looks of it, you have indeed grown up. You are no longer my disciple, but an opponent who can fight me.
As Wang Mingyuan spoke, light threads surged out of his body. They quickly fused with his wounds, and also caused his body to undergo a strange change. His body gradually turned translucent, but his organs, bones, flesh, and blood couldn't be seen at all. All that could be seen were countless starlight-like points of light flowing in his body, as though it was an independent universe.
Do you know what the strongest power in this world is?
Wang Mingyuan looked down at Zhou, one like a creature produced by the universe.
No,
Zhou answered coldly.
That's the rules of chaos. Chaos is nothingness. It's a rule without any rules. If you can comprehend this, you will be the ruler of this universe. Nothing will surprise you again, because everything in the world will be within your rules.
The power emitted by Wang Mingyuan tore through the dimensional airspace. A tunnel that took the combined strength of 9 devil pets to open was torn open by Wang Mingyuan alone. Furthermore, the power that tore through space was only because of his excessive power. It wasn't deliberate. Chapter 1873 Ascending to the Destiny Platform Again. Chapter 1873 Ascending to the Destiny Platform Again. Zhou watched as Wang Mingyuan grew stronger, but in the end, he couldn't sense his strength fluctuations at all. Not sensing any energy fluctuations didn't mean that they no longer existed, but that he had such overwhelming power that it was undetectable. It was just like how humans lived on Earth, but couldn't sense Earth's high-speed movement. When the difference in strength was large enough to accommodate the other party, there was no way to sense it. How many apocalypse-grade creatures did he devour to have such strength? Zhou was somewhat alarmed. Such strength was indeed terrifying. As though reading Zhou's mind, Wang Mingyuan spoke with a smile.
Even if you absorb all the power of the dimension's apocalypse-grade creatures, it's impossible to reach such a level. The source of strength isn't about quantity, it's about what you have and how it can be used.
What you have determines your upper limit, and what you can do with these things determines if there's a limit,
Wang Mingyuan said as he looked up slightly. Zhou felt an omnipresent force pressing down on his body, as though it wanted to crush him.
Warning. Warning. Discovered cosmic power. Please immediately activate cosmic mode.
The combat suit's voice sounded in Zhou's mind again.
Activate cosmic mode.
Zhou authorized the combat suit to carry out the order. The light patterns on the combat suit immediately produced an intense reaction. The entire combat suit turned into light, as though a ball of white energy was enveloping Zhou. After cosmic mode was activated, the combat suit's analysis appeared in his mind again.
Unknown creature. Cosmic energy level 0.99.
According to the analysis of the combat suit, Wang Mingyuan's energy value didn't even seem to reach 1. Zhou didn't know how it was categorized. Such powerful energy wasn't even at 1.
Maintaining cosmic mode requires additional energy from the owner's body. Detected insufficient energy, using stored energy to maintain cosmic mode. Currently, the energy level is at 16%. It can maintain cosmic mode for 13 seconds. 13. 12.
The combat suit's voice constantly sounded in Zhou's mind.
Wang Mingyuan looked at him and said with a smile.
That combat suit is indeed good stuff. Unfortunately, you know nothing about its essence, nor do you have the ability to control it. How long can you maintain this state? It doesn't matter how long it takes.
Zhou switched off the combat suit's cosmic mode.
Leave the combat suit and that woman behind and you may leave.
Wang Mingyuan said to Zhou, believing that he had given up.
Defeat me and everything will naturally be yours.
The lost immortal sutra in Zhou's body circulated crazily.
Is my action even required? Without the energy support of the combat suit, you aren't qualified to be my opponent.
Wang Mingyuan said.
Just because it's not enough now doesn't mean it won't ever be enough.
As Zhou spoke, his figure suddenly vanished. When he appeared again, he had already arrived behind the woman and grabbed her.
It's useless. Without the power of the combat suit, you can't take her away.
Wang Mingyuan looked at Zhou, as the power of the entire universe seemed to press down on him. Ignoring spatial teleportation, he couldn't even move a step. The entire space pressed down on him, making it difficult for him to move. Zhou's combat suit activated cosmic mode again, which enveloped his body like a blob of light.
How many seconds can you last? 10 seconds? 8?
Wang Mingyuan was like the ruler of the universe as he walked toward Zhou Wen step by step. No matter how Zhou Wen changed his position, he arrived in front of him. No matter which way Zhou Wen went or how he used spatial teleportation, the outcome was the same. Wang Mingyuan appeared in front of him with a single step. Wang Mingyuan wasn't in a rush to fight Zhou Wen. He could easily defeat Zhou Wen and snatch the woman back when the combat suit's energy was depleted. However, when Zhou Wen moved again, Wang Mingyuan frowned and didn't chase after him. He stood there and looked at Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen stood on the stone steps of the staircase and pulled the woman up.
You plan on using the Destiny platform's energy to charge the combat suit again?
Wang Mingyuan watched Zhou Wen run up the stairs without any intention of chasing after him. The cube lit up again. To everyone's surprise, Human Sovereign was pulling the woman and running up the stairs again.
Again? Doing this again and again? Is he having a good time? Boss, that's a staircase, not a slide. Don't do that. Others scale the staircase, but what's Human Sovereign doing? Human Sovereign, can we be more serious? This is a high-end place in the dimension. How can you use it as a playground?
Although people said that Human Sovereign shouldn't be using it as a playground, they were all in high spirits. Zhou Wen pulled the woman up. His speed wasn't very fast because he didn't use the power to block taboos. Instead, he suffered the power of the staircase. His present strength was unable to resist Wang Mingyuan, and the energy reserves of his combat suit were insufficient. Only by using the Destiny platform's power to advance to the Apocalypse grade could he have the capital to fight Wang Mingyuan. Zhou Wen had already tried countless times in game. With his own strength, he couldn't advance to the Apocalypse grade without the energy baptism of the Destiny platform. However, today's battle gave him a new idea. The energy of the combat suit and Wang Mingyuan inspired Zhou Wen. Wang Mingyuan was right. It wasn't necessarily true that one was stronger with greater powers. It depended on what one had and how one used these powers. This sentence reminded him that the most important thing was the combat suit's cosmic mode. It gave Zhou Wen a new understanding of the Immortal Law Sutra. He figured out why he found it so difficult to cultivate. It wasn't that the Lost Immortal Sutra itself was difficult, but that the rules of the world he understood were different from the rules needed by the Lost Immortal Sutra. Therefore, Zhou Wen had never understood many things about the Lost Immortal Sutra. However, after seeing the combat suit's cosmic mode and Wang Mingyuan's strength, Zhou Wen knew what the problem was. Without a doubt, the no-rules power Wang Mingyuan had comprehended was essentially because he had understood the rules of another world. He had combined the rules of that world with the power of this world to produce the so-called no-rules power. Zhou Wen pulled the woman onto the Destiny platform. The power of the staircase couldn't stop him at all. Even the woman was pulled onto the Destiny platform. Terrifying energy immediately condensed on the Destiny platform. However, this time, Zhou Wen didn't wear his combat suit to receive the Destiny platform's energy. He released the woman and removed the combat suit, allowing it to float beside him. He used his body to receive the baptism of the Destiny platform's power. Chapter 1874 Ninth Heaven's Human Sovereign. Chapter 1874 Ninth Heaven's Human Sovereign. The energy that crazily surged into his body was circulated by Zhou Wen via the Lost Immortal Sutra. He had already tried many times in the past. He didn't wish to transform his body into the most perfect state, nor did he wish to erase his personality. It was precisely because it wasn't perfect that it gave life its myriad colors. If everyone cultivated according to the most perfect ratio and the most perfect personality, what was the difference between them and robots? They might as well create a perfect robot body and inject their souls into it. What was the point of cultivation? Zhou Wen didn't wish for absolute perfection. He only hoped that he could constantly surpass himself in a certain aspect. But previously, Zhou Wen had repeatedly met with failure. It was just like a student who was good in one subject but bad in others. No matter how good he was in that single subject, it was still difficult for him to get into an ideal university after failing all the other subjects. This described Zhou Wen's present situation. He wanted to use all his energy to strengthen a certain portion, and not strengthen everything. However, the outcome of doing so was that other than that portion, the other aspects of the body couldn't meet the requirements to advance to the Apocalypse grade. This resulted in repeated failures. However, seeing Wang Mingyuan's no rules and combat suit's cosmic mode suddenly inspired Zhou Wen. Since there was no way to advance to the Apocalypse grade in such a manner, could he bypass the rules of advancement and use a new method to advance to the Apocalypse grade? Apocalypse was the rule of this world, and in another world, there was no such thing as an apocalypse. For example, Enjing's mother was born with an Apocalypse grade body. Advancing to the Apocalypse grade wasn't even a problem they faced. Ancient Sovereign Sutra. Demon God Bloodline Catalog. Small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. God Fiend Era. Qi Refinement Art. Dao Sutra. Sky-stealing sun-swapping art. First Order of Chaos. 8 strange energies constantly changed over Zhou Wen's body. If he followed the normal path of advancement, Zhou Wen's body would be transformed into the most perfect state by the Lost Immortal Sutra. All his personality would be wiped out, and these 8 powers naturally wouldn't exist. It couldn't be said that they wouldn't exist, but that it would be pointless differentiating them. For example, some athletes were good at speed, some were good at strength, and others were good at technique. For the Lost Immortal Sutra, it allowed a person to have everything strength, speed, and technique. Was there a need to separate the competitions? However, from Zhou Wen's point of view, being strong in everything meant that he wasn't strong in anything. Without a comparison, there wouldn't be a better or worse. What he needed to do now was to retain his personality and also preserve the possibility of advancing further. Zhou Wen's strength rose as it transformed into a corporeal body behind him. The figure was like a transparent figure of light that constantly changed its form and aura. The figure was like a Qi refinement warrior as the aura in the body constantly evolved. It guided the aura in his body to change, demonstrating the profundity of the Qi refinement art layer by layer. Among the people watching the cube screen, there were many people who practiced essence energy arts related to Qi refinement. When they saw the transformation of the figure, all of them felt as though they had obtained a treasure. They found the answer to many questions in their hearts.
So this is what Qi refinement is like. Controlling Qi with thoughts. I figured it out. A sword beam is akin to a rainbow. One strike travels 15,000 kilometers. I finally understand. A formidable aura. I finally understand.
The humans who cultivated arduously, be it the big shots who were about to break through their limits or ordinary cultivators, obtained a lot of inspiration and understanding from the light behind Zhou Wen. Many people immediately broke through the shackles that had been troubling them for a long time. After the Qi refinement art, the figure transformed into the Hell King form of small perfection of wisdom as it constantly evolved.
Amitabha. Buddha is compassionate. I've been given such great fortune in my lifetime.
A monk stood in the snow and looked at the scene in the cube. His eyebrows drooped as a Buddhistic glow gradually rose from his body. Everyone who practiced Buddhism in the human world was enlightened. Instantly, countless humans broke through their realms. After the small perfection of wisdom, the figure transformed into a demon god. Demonic aura blotted out the sky as it constantly changed its various stances. It shed its demon body layer by layer, transforming from a demon to a god before finally achieving greatness. When humans who cultivated the demon essence energy art saw this scene, even the ancestors of the aristocratic families suddenly shed their wrinkled old skins. They broke out of their cocoons and were reborn. Their rejuvenated bodies walked out of their old skins.
What I've gained can't be paid back. This technique is like a teacher. You deserve my bow.
A patriarch resembling a youth genuflected at the cube. The moment the Dao Sutra was used, thousands of ascetic cultivators broke through. Purple light surged into the sky from the Zhang family of Mount Dragon Tiger. One Taoist after another, who had been bottlenecked for countless years, suddenly had purple gas surge from their bodies as purple lotus flowers bloomed above their heads. In the remote mountains and lakes, there were people who cultivated arduously only to comprehend the great Tao in one day. 1ds. A person stood above the mountains and seas. The aura of the great Tao on his body was as majestic as the sea, causing the sea to recede. Dark clouds covered the sky as lightning struck down and struck the person. The person's body was struck by the lightning, but he remained unharmed. Instead, his entire body became brighter and brighter, as though he had been tempered by lightning.
I figured out my Tao.
The person looked up at the sky and spread out his arms to welcome the baptism of the lightning. The light behind Zhou Wen constantly changed, almost covering all sorts of different essence energy arts. Anyone who saw this would more or less gain some insight. The entire human world had their realms increased by a level or two on this day. The 8th one regarding the transformation into human sovereign's body was a variation in essence energy that very few people could comprehend. The world only knew the way of a king and overlord, but they didn't know the way of the sovereign as self-sacrificial belief. In the presidential palace, Hui Haifeng stared at the figure that had transformed into human sovereign as though in thought. The light behind Zhou Wen froze in its human sovereign form. However, above the human sovereign figure, strange figures appeared. 7 different types overlapped and fused into the human sovereign figure, gradually becoming one with it. The figure was like a god or devil, a saint or demon, a ghost or immortal, a king or heaven. A terrifying aura constantly evolved in his body, turning into a pure beam of light that illuminated a world. The energy in the Destiny platform had already stopped surging. Zhou Wen looked at his stats with an odd expression. Behind the New World column were the words 9th Heaven's Human Sovereign. He had clearly used the power of the Destiny platform to condense a new world. Why was his level still at the Calamity grade and not the Apocalypse grade? Could it be that this situation happened because I took a detour and didn't use my body as a foundation to forge a new world? Zhou wore a complicated expression, unsure if this situation was good or bad. Chapter 1875 Woman's Memories. Chapter 1875 Woman's Memories. The cube screen switched to the rankings. The name Ninth Heaven's Human Sovereign appeared on the rankings, ranked at the bottom. Now, everyone realized that the cube's rankings were arranged according to the order of ascension. It had nothing to do with strength.
With such a ranking, wouldn't the first person to ascend gain a huge advantage? What's going on? Whoever gets first place will be first. Is there any meaning to such a ranking? Don't make hasty conclusions. There must be something amiss. I think there's definitely a follow-up to this ranking. It's impossible for it to end just like that.
Everyone discussed spiritedly, feeling that such a ranking was too unfair. Zhou put on the combat suit again. The woman stood on Destiny platform and didn't escape again. She already knew that she had no chance of escaping in front of these two humans. She could only hope that they suffered a deadly outcome before she had a chance of survival. Wang Mingyuan looked at Zhou from midair. The Ninth Heaven's Human Sovereign stood in midair above Zhou and faced him. One was a transparent cosmic body with billions of stars, while the other was formed from pure light. Terrifying power constantly appeared out of thin air between the two, like a cosmic storm. Just the energy produced from the confrontation was enough to destroy a planet. Wang Mingyuan stared at the Ninth Heaven's Human Sovereign for a moment, before turning his gaze to Zhou and the woman. After a long while he sighed and said,
"You have already reached the Destiny platform. There's no room for negotiation. Forget it. Take her away. We'll settle this on the day of Destiny."
With that said, Wang Mingyuan took a step forward, tearing open a spatial rift in the dimensional airspace as he stepped into it and vanished. Zhou was slightly taken aback as the woman's expression changed drastically. She originally wished for an internecine outcome between Zhou and Wang Mingyuan, but she never expected the latter to retreat. Zhou looked at the woman and said coldly,
"If you want to live, answer my questions. It's best you don't disappoint me. What do you want to know?"
The woman sighed.
"Where are you from and why are you here?"
Zhou asked the most fundamental question. He knew that the woman came from another world, but he didn't know what world it was. As for the reason the woman came here, he was almost certain of the answer.
"I come from a world without gods,"
the woman said without any hesitation.
"A world without gods? Is that the name of your world?"
Zhou frowned.
"Does the world you live in have a name?"
the woman asked. Zhou found it reasonable. Naming something was relative. If there was no other world as a reference, who would name an infinite existence?
"What kind of world is that?"
Zhou asked again.
"There's no way to describe it because it's completely different from your world. It's a completely different system. I don't know how to describe it to you. I can only say that it's a world without gods,"
the woman said.
"Continue,"
Zhou said coldly.
"Since you have already mastered the Lost Immortal Sutra and activated the combat suit, you should be able to sense how different that world is."
The woman pondered for a moment before continuing.
"Can I ask you a question? Speak."
Zhou roughly guessed what she wanted to ask.
"Humans have already evolved to such a stage. Is Earth still in existence?"
The woman saw that Zhou and Wang Mingyuan were already so terrifying that they were about to reach the threshold of her world. Therefore, she was still looking forward to seeing if her child had already come into being. Would she be as powerful as Zhou and Wang Mingyuan, or perhaps even stronger? After all, her child had received Earth's energy. Her achievements should be second only to the Devil King. The Devil King had been schemed against by her, and had yet to recover. Then, the strongest person in this world should be her daughter.
"I'm afraid I'll be disappointing you. Earth is still intact,"
Zhou said indifferently.
"Earth is still around? Earth's companion beast hasn't appeared yet?"
The woman's expression changed slightly. This was somewhat different from what she had imagined. Humans had already evolved to such a level, so how could Earth's companion beast not have appeared?
"You want to ask about your daughter, right?"
Zhou stared at the woman.
You? How did you know?"
The woman's expression changed drastically as she had an ominous feeling.
"Answer my question, and I'll naturally tell you the answer."
Zhou looked at the woman and said,
"You better think carefully before answering my question. I don't have the patience to waste my time with you."
The woman's expression changed. From Zhou's attitude, she knew that something had probably happened to her daughter.
"What do you want to know?"
the woman asked through gritted teeth.
"Do I need to ask again?"
Zhou said with a cold expression. The woman stared at Zhou for a while before slowly saying,
"I'm just an extremely ordinary mother in that world. As my child was born with a congenital flaw, she couldn't survive in my world. I tried everything to let her live a little longer.
The woman slowly recounted her story. Most of it was as Zhou Wen had imagined, but there were also some things that Zhou Wen hadn't expected. The woman's husband was a member of a mysterious organization and also a researcher. The woman accidentally saw her husband's research and realized that they were studying another world. She was only curious back then. After reading their research materials, she was surprised to discover a possibility of letting her daughter live. Her daughter was born weak and had problems with her organs. It was impossible for her to survive in her world. However, if it was in the world her husband studied, the requirements for survival in that world were very low. Furthermore, in the research project, there was a way to use the energy of that world to strengthen oneself. Air. The woman stole her husband's work pass and sneaked into the research facility. She stole experimenter that could enter the alternate world. At the same time, she stole the combat suit, phone, lost immortal sutra, and some other things in the laboratory. Back when she took those things, she had already triggered the laboratory's alarm. Originally, she would have been stopped, but her husband appeared in time and stopped the laboratory personnel, allowing her to activate experimenter at the final moment to enter the alternate world. However, before experimenter entered the alternate world, she saw her husband being beaten to death because he had tried his best to stop those people. Although the woman had set a course for return, she never made the trip. What happened after the woman arrived was similar to Zhou Wen's previous guess. She entered Earth following the experimental data and dug out Earth's companion egg. Then, she placed her daughter inside and let her absorb Earth's energy to grow. However, the woman felt that this wasn't enough. This was because the true ruler of this world was the Devil King. Only by obtaining the source of the Devil King's energy could one become the strongest existence in this world. The woman realized that she was no match for the Devil King even with the stolen combat suit. She deliberately approached the Devil King and relied on the novel ideas and various trinkets of the other world to obtain the Devil King's trust. The Devil King was engrossed in the research of the things she had brought with her, and ignored everything else. Only then did the woman have the chance to secretly sow discord, making all races unwilling to be bullied by the devils again. They joined forces to destroy the devils. Back then, the gods and immortals were extremely powerful. They were also the Devil King's most trusted right-hand men. However, she never expected the gods and immortals to betray her. Furthermore, the immortal Arch of the Immortals appeared out of nowhere, and possessed strength that was in no way inferior to the Devil King. In that battle, having indulged in those mysterious things and studying them, she had exhausted most of her strength. Defeat was the only outcome. Even so, the Devil King still opened a spatial passageway and took herself and the 9 devil pets out of the battlefield before disappearing. The woman originally thought that she could reap the benefits, but to her surprise, not only did she let the Devil King escape, but the strength of that immortal arch far exceeded her expectations. After the Devil King vanished, she had originally planned on conquering the world and turning all the strongest powerhouses in this world into servants to give her daughter the best living environment. However, she had underestimated Immortal Arch. Her plan was mostly ruined. Many important things had been lost in that battle, and she nearly lost her life. It was only because Immortal Arch didn't understand the technology of the other world that she barely won the bet and suppressed Immortal Arch. However, in fact, Immortal Arch wasn't injured at all. She herself suffered from non-trivial injuries, and her combat suit's energy was depleted. She had to return to the ship to sleep and recharge. Thankfully, Immortal Arch kept her promise and trapped herself in Chess Mountain to help the woman protect her child. This allowed the woman to sleep in peace and recharge. The more Zhou Wen listened, the more he felt that something was amiss. This was because the woman only mentioned 2 points. One point was the research facility, and the other was the world Zhou Wen was in. Apart from that, the woman seemed to know nothing about the world she came from.
Do you remember the color of the sky in your world?
Zhou Wen asked the woman.
The sky is naturally,
the woman originally said in disdain, but before she could finish her sentence, she suddenly realized that she had never seen the sky before. Her expression gradually changed.
Don't tell me your home was in that research facility?
Zhou Wen looked at the woman and asked with an odd expression.